Being a teenager and going through this, it's different because it's your first time feeling everything this deeply. The first time you stay up late just to talk to someone. The first time your mood depends on a notification. The first time you actually care if someone stays or leaves, and you don't even realize how much it's affecting you at the time. You just think, this is what it's supposed to feel like, so you give everything. Your time, your attention, your energy. Because to you at that age, you don't know how to control how much you feel. Nobody teaches you that. There's no balance, no take it slow. You just go all in without even realizing it. Because when something feels real for the first time, you don't question it. You don't think about protecting yourself. You don't think about what could go wrong. You don't think about whether the other person feels the same way. You just feel it. And you let it take over everything. Your whole day starts revolving around them. You wake up and check your phone first thing. You wait for their message like it actually means something. You reread conversations like there's something hidden in them. And the craziest part? You don't even notice how deep you're getting. It feels normal. It feels like this is just what liking someone is supposed to be. And when they give you attention, it hits different at that age. Because it's not just attention, it's validation. It's the feeling of being chosen. The feeling that out of everyone, they're picking you to talk to laugh with, to spend time on. And when you haven't felt that before, it becomes everything. That's why you start giving more time, more energy, more of yourself. You stay up later than you should just to talk to them. You ignore other things just to keep the conversation going. You make space for them in your life without even realizing how much space you're giving. And in your head, you think it's mutual. You think they feel it the same way you do. Because why wouldn't they? They're replying. They're talking. They're there. So it must mean something, right? But that's the part nobody tells you when you're younger. Just because someone is there doesn't mean they're there the same way you are. And you don't realize that yet. Not until things start changing. And when things start changing, you don't accept it right away. You feel it, but you don't accept it. Because at that age, your first instinct isn't to walk away, it's to hold on tighter. You start overthinking everything. Why did they reply slower? Why do they seem different? Did I do something wrong? And instead of pulling back, you lean in. You text more. You try harder to keep the conversation alive. You become more available, more understanding, more patient. Because in your head, if something is slipping, you don't let go. You fix it. But what you don't realize is you're the only one trying to fix something. And that's where it starts to hurt. Not all at once, slowly. You start noticing the little things, the way they don't text like they used to, the way conversations feel shorter, the way you're the one carrying most of it now, and it's confusing, because just a little while ago, everything felt easy. So you keep chasing that version, the version of them that made you feel wanted, the version that stayed up late with you, the version that made it feel like you mattered. And every time they show a little bit of that again, it resets everything. You think, okay, it's back. You think maybe it was just a phase. Maybe you were overthinking. Maybe everything is fine. But it never stays. It comes back for a moment, then disappears again. And that's when you start feeling something you've never really felt before. Not just sadness, not just confusion, but the feeling of caring more than someone else. And when that hits you for the first time, at that age, it changes you. That feeling of caring more than someone else, it's something you don't understand the first time it happens. Because in your head, you're thinking, how can I care this much and they don't feel the same? It doesn't make sense. You replay everything, all the conversations, all the late nights, all the moments that felt real, and you start questioning all of it. You wonder if you imagined it, if you read too deep into things, if you made something bigger than it actually was. Because how does something feel that real and still end up one-sided? So you try to fix it, not directly, but in small ways. You change how you text, you try to be more interesting, you try to say the right things. You become more aware of everything you do because now you're trying to hold on to something that's already slipping. And the worst part is, they don't even realize what you're going through. To them, it's just a shift, just a change in how they feel. But to you, it feels like everything is falling apart, because at that age, you don't separate your feelings from your identity. If someone pulls away, you don't just think they change. You think, what's wrong with me? And that question stays in your head, quietly, in the background, every time they reply late, every time they seem distant, every time you feel like you're trying harder than they are. You start shrinking yourself without noticing, trying to fit into what you think they'll stay for, trying to be enough in a way that makes them come back. But no one tells you this when you're younger. You can't fix someone losing feelings by changing yourself, and that's the part you learn the hard way. That's when it really starts to change you. Not just how you feel about them, but how you start seeing yourself. Because once you feel like you're not enough for someone, that thought doesn't just stay in that situation. It follows you. You start second-guessing everything. The way you talk, the way you act, the way you show up. You think maybe you were too much, too available, too caring, too real. So you start holding back. Not because you want to, but because now you're scared of feeling that same way again. And the crazy part is, they probably don't even realize the impact they had. To them, it was just something that didn't work out, just a phase, just someone they talked to for a while. But to you, it was your first time feeling something real, your first time getting attached like that, your first time learning what it feels like to lose someone emotionally before you even fully had them. And that sticks with you, because now you know what it feels like to give everything and not get it back the same way. So the next time something like that comes around, you're not the same. You hesitate, you think more, you hold back parts of yourself you used to give freely. And that's when your teenage years start teaching you something nobody explains to you directly. Not everyone you feel something real with is meant to stay. After that, you start realizing something you didn't understand before. Not everyone feels things the same way you do. Because in your mind, if something feels real, it should mean something. It should last. It should turn into something more. But reality doesn't always work like that. Someone can talk to you every day, laugh with you, stay up late with you, make you feel like you matter, and still not feel it the same way you do. And that's confusing when you're younger, because you don't understand how something can feel so real and still not be real to them. So you start questioning everything, not just them, but the whole idea of what you felt. You think, was it even real? Did I just imagine it? Did I care more than I should have? But the truth is, it was real, just not equal. And that's a hard lesson to learn that early. Because now you're not just dealing with feelings, you're dealing with imbalance. You start realizing you are the one initiating more, the one caring more, the one thinking about them more, the one building something in your head that they were just experiencing in the moment. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. That's when things shift inside you. Not loudly, but quietly. You stop looking at it like something that ended and start seeing it for what it actually was. Something that meant more to you than it ever did to them. And once that realization settles in, you start changing in ways you don't even notice at first. You're not as quick to open up anymore. You don't say everything on your mind like you used to. You don't give your time as freely, because now you've seen what happens when you do. Not that you don't care anymore, it's that you care differently, more carefully, more guarded. Because before, you didn't think twice about it. If you liked someone, you showed it. If you cared, you gave it fully. No hesitation, no second guessing. But now, there's a pause, a moment where you think, is this even worth it? And that pause comes from experience, from that first time you gave everything and realized it didn't guarantee anything. So now you move smarter, you watch actions more, you notice effort more, you pay attention to how someone shows up, not just what they say. And even though it makes you more aware, there's a small part of you that misses how you used to be. The version of you that didn't overthink. The version that just felt things fully without fear. The version that believed if something felt real, that means something. Because that version of you was pure, unfiltered, real in a way that's hard to get back once it changes. But that's what growing up during those years does to you. It doesn't just give you memories, it gives you awareness. And sometimes that awareness comes from learning things the hard way. After a while, you stop blaming them, and you stop blaming yourself. Because at that age, nobody really knows what they're doing, not fully. They don't know how to handle someone who cares deeply. They don't know how to communicate properly. They don't know how to leave without hurting someone. And you don't know how to protect yourself yet. So everything becomes intense. The good feels really good. The bad feels really bad. There's no balance, just highs and lows. And looking back, you start realizing something important. It wasn't meant to last. It was meant to teach you. It taught you what effort looks like, what inconsistency feels like, what it means to care more than someone else, and most importantly, it taught you what you should never accept again. Because once you've felt that imbalance, you recognize it faster next time. You don't stay as long, you don't ignore the signs as easily, not because you don't care anymore, but because now you understand your value a little more than you did before. And that's the shift. You're not the same person you were at the start of it. You're more aware, more careful, more intentional. And even though it came from something that hurt, that growth, that stays. And when you look back on it later, you don't just remember the person. You remember the version of you that existed during that time. The version of you that felt everything without holding back. The version of you that stayed up late just to talk to someone. The version of you that gave your time, your energy, your attention without thinking twice about it. And yeah, that version of you got hurt, got confused, got left trying to understand something that didn't make sense. But that doesn't make it a mistake. It makes it real. Because those teenage years, they're not just about what happens. They're about what you learn from it. You learn that not everyone stays. You learn that feelings aren't always equal. You learn that just because something feels real doesn't mean it's meant to last. But you also learn something more important than all of that. You learn how deeply you can care, how real you can be, how much you're capable of giving when you're fully invested in someone. And that's not something to regret, that's something to take with you. Because one day, you'll meet someone who matches that energy, someone who doesn't make you question it, someone who doesn't make you feel like you're too much or not enough. And when that happens, everything you went through back then will finally make sense. Because those teenage years didn't break you, they built you into someone who knows the difference between something that feels real and something that actually is. What about my feelings? It's crazy. I can show up for everyone, I can listen, support, stay up late talking them through their problems, be the one who holds everything together. But the second it's my turn, everything goes silent. Like my emotions suddenly don't matter as much. Like I'm supposed to be the strong one all the time. The one who can handle it. The one who never needs anything back. Everyone sees the protector, but no one sees the person breaking behind the sword. And somewhere along the way, I became that person too. The one who says, I'm fine, even when I'm not. The one who smiles even when something in me is falling apart. Not because I want to hide it, but because explaining myself feels like a burden. Because I'm scared that if I finally open up, people will think I'm too much. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I taught everyone that I'm the one who never needs help, that I'm the one who always knows what to do, that I can hold all their weight without ever needing someone to carry mine. But the truth is, even the strong get tired. Even the ones who never complain still hope someone will look at them and say, "Are you okay? Really okay?" It hurts when the same people you've held up for years don't show up for you in the same way. Not because you want them to solve your problems, because you want to know your feelings matter too. Sometimes I don't want advice. Sometimes I don't need a solution. Sometimes I just want someone to sit with me and say, I get it, that sounds heavy. I'm here because my feelings are real, they're valid, And I'm finally learning that I don't need someone else to give me permission to feel them. I don't have to pretend to be unbreakable just because I've been the strong one for so long. The person who's there for everyone else deserves someone who will check on them too. Let this be a reminder for you, not tomorrow, not when things finally get better. Right now, you are a genuinely amazing human being, even if you don't feel like it lately. And I know maybe life hit you harder than you expected. Maybe someone you trusted dimmed your light. Maybe you slowly stopped recognizing yourself because you've been in survival mode for too long. But losing your spark doesn't mean it's gone forever. It just means you've been tired. You have so much potential in this world, and I don't say that lightly. There are qualities about you that people would do anything to have. Your heart, your ability to care deeply, the way you keep showing up even when you feel empty, the way you keep going even when nobody claps for you. That strength alone says more about you than you realize. You deserve happiness, not the kind you have to chase endlessly, but the kind that feels calm. You deserve confidence, not arrogance, but confidence rooted in knowing who you are and what you bring to the table. You deserve to love yourself without feeling guilty for it, without feeling like you need permission, without feeling like you haven't earned it yet. Somewhere along the way, you might have started believing you weren't enough. Maybe someone treated you like you were replaceable. Maybe life kept taking without giving back. And slowly, you stopped being kind to yourself. You stopped celebrating your wins. You stopped acknowledging how far you've come. But look at you. You're still here, still trying, still growing. That alone deserves recognition. I need reminders like this too. We all do. Nobody walks through life feeling confident every single day. Nobody has it all figured out. The difference is learning to speak to yourself with the same compassion you give to everyone else. Learning to pause and say, I'm doing my best and that is enough for today. So if this showed up on your feed, take it as a sign. Take a breath. Think of one thing you're grateful for, one thing you like about yourself, one small win you had recently, even if it feels insignificant. Because nothing about your existence is insignificant. You matter more than you think. You bring something to this world that nobody else can replace. And even on days when you feel invisible, even on days when you doubt yourself, your presence still holds value. Don't forget that. Not today. Not ever. The worst combination you can be is a clingy person who also overthinks everything. Because your heart and your mind are never on the same team. Your heart just wants closeness. It wants to be next to them. Wants to hold them, hug them, feel their presence, fall asleep next to them, talk about nothing, do everything together. You don't want space, you want connection. But your mind never shuts up. Your mind is constantly running scenarios you never asked for. What if I'm doing too much? What if I'm annoying her? What if she needs space and I'm suffocating her? What if she hasn't texted back because she's tired of me? So you're stuck in this loop where you want to be close, but you're scared that wanting closeness is the very thing that might push her away. You want to text her, but you stare at the screen for 10 minutes before sending it. You want to call her, but you stop yourself because you don't want to seem needy. You want to ask her to hang out, but you tell yourself, nah, I already saw her yesterday. Don't do too much. And that's the part nobody talks about. Being clingy doesn't mean you're insecure. It doesn't mean you're weak. It usually just means you love deeply. But when you overthink on top of that, love starts to feel like walking on eggshells. Every little thing becomes something you analyze. Her tone, her response time, the way she said goodnight, the way she didn't say it the same way she did before. And your mind takes that tiny detail and turns it into a full-blown story about how you're about to lose her, so you pull back. Not because you want to, but because you're scared. You start acting less like yourself. You become quieter. You stop being affectionate the way you naturally are. You stop saying what you feel in the moment. And the crazy part is, the thing you're afraid of becoming too much slowly turns into you becoming too little. You convince yourself distance is safer than vulnerability, that silence is better than risking rejection, that holding back is better than being honest. But here's the truth you need to hear. If she chose you knowing how you are, then you being yourself is not the problem. She didn't accidentally end up with you. She saw you. She learned you. She felt your energy, and she still stayed. Every thought in your head is not a fact. Just because your mind says something doesn't make it true. Your mind is trying to protect you from pain, but sometimes it protects you so hard that it sabotages the very thing you care about. Love isn't about constantly shrinking yourself so someone doesn't leave. Real love isn't built on fear. If someone truly wants you, your affection won't scare them away. Your presence won't be a burden. Your desire to be close won't be too much. And if someone makes you feel like it is, then the problem was never your heart. You don't need to punish yourself for loving loudly. You don't need to silence your feelings just to seem cooler. You don't need to turn cold to protect yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do as an overthinker is trust that not every good thing is about to disappear. Let yourself love the way you love. Let yourself be close. Let yourself feel. because the right person won't see your clinginess as a flaw. They'll see it as care, as effort, as love. And the moment you stop fighting who you are, love stops feeling like a constant battle inside your head. They say your second love hits the deepest. And at first I didn't believe that. I thought nothing could touch the intensity of the first one. The first love is loud. It's reckless. It's the kind of love that makes you believe everything will work out just because you feel it so strongly. You fall without thinking. You trust without fear. You don't even know what heartbreak really is yet, so you give everything freely. But the second love comes after reality has already introduced itself. It comes after disappointment, after the nights where you questioned your worth, after you learned that love doesn't always stay no matter how hard you try. So this time, you don't rush, you don't dive in head first, you hesitate, you analyze, you protect your heart like it's something fragile because now you know it is. And that's what makes the second love different. You don't love blindly anymore, you love intentionally, you pay attention to effort, to consistency, to how someone treats you when it's inconvenient, not just when it's easy. You're still scared, but you're braver in a quieter way. You open up slowly, piece by piece, hoping you won't regret it again. And somehow, it still means more than you expected, because after being broken once, feeling safe again hits different. Feeling chosen without having to beg hits different. Being loved without chaos feels almost unfamiliar at first. You keep waiting for the catch. For the moment it all falls apart, but it doesn't, at least not right away. The second love isn't about butterflies in your stomach. It's about calm in your chest. It's about being understood without having to explain yourself over and over. It's about not feeling anxious when your phone is quiet. It's about knowing where you stand. It's about realizing that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. And even if the second love doesn't last forever, it leaves a different kind of mark. It teaches you what love is supposed to feel like. It shows you that you can love deeply without losing yourself, that you can stay soft without being naive, that healing doesn't mean closing your heart, it means choosing better. Your first love changes you, but your second love reminds you why you didn't give up on love in the first place. And that's why it hurts deeper, because this time you knew what you were risking and you loved anyway. What people don't tell you is that the second love doesn't just affect your heart, it reshapes the way you see everything. You're not the same person you were the first time you fell in love. You're more aware now, more cautious. You've seen how quickly things can change, how someone can promise forever and still walk away. So you love with your eyes open this time. You notice the small things, the tone shifts, the effort levels, the moments where silence says more than words ever could. You're not naive anymore, but you're not closed off either. And that's the dangerous balance, because part of you is still hopeful, still wanting to believe that this time will be different, that maybe this love will be the one that stays. And because you're loving with intention now, when it starts to slip, you feel it immediately. The second love hurts because you don't get blindsided. You see it coming. You sense the distance before it's spoken. You feel the warmth fade before it's gone. You recognize the patterns because you've lived them before, and yet you still stay longer than you should. Not because you're desperate, but because you understand love better now. You know relationships aren't perfect. You know people struggle. You try to be patient. You try to communicate. You try to fix instead of flee. That's what makes it cut deeper when it ends. Because you didn't love blindly. You loved consciously. You loved knowing the risk. The second love doesn't shatter you the way the first one does. It doesn't leave you confused about what went wrong. Instead, it leaves you quietly exhausted. You don't cry as loudly. You don't fall apart as dramatically. You just sit with this heavy realization that sometimes, even when you do things the right way, love can still end. And that's a different kind of pain. It's the pain of knowing you grew, healed, and tried again, and still didn't get the ending you hoped for. But it's also the pain that proves how strong you've become, because even after everything, you are still capable of opening your heart again. That matters more than you think. The second love stays with you in quieter ways, not as chaos, not as obsession, but as reflection. It makes you look at yourself differently, at the way you love, at the boundaries you set, at the parts of you that grew stronger and the parts that are still tender. You don't replay every moment wondering what you did wrong like the first time. Instead, you replay moments wondering how something that felt so healthy could still slip through your fingers, and that's when it hits you. Love isn't a guarantee. Effort doesn't come with insurance. Doing your best doesn't mean you'll always get to keep what you care about. That realization hurts, but it also matures you. You stop romanticizing pain. You stop thinking love has to be hard to be meaningful. You stop chasing people who can't meet you where you are. The second love teaches you discernment. It teaches you that chemistry isn't enough, that timing matters, that two good people can still be wrong for each other in that moment of life. And accepting that is one of the hardest lessons there is. You don't come out of it bitter, at least not if you're honest with yourself. You come out clearer. You know what you want now, what you won't tolerate, what you deserve without needing to explain it to anyone. And even though it didn't last, it didn't fail, it served its purpose. It showed you that love can feel safe, that connection can be calm, that you don't have to lose yourself to be close to someone. The second love doesn't destroy your belief in love, it refines it. It strips away the fantasy and leaves you with truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is always better than illusion. Because now, when love comes again, and it will, you won't be chasing it, you'll be choosing it. What makes the second love linger is how close it came to being right. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't built on illusion. It felt grounded, like something you could grow into, instead of something you were chasing, and that's why letting it go feels so unfair. You did the work this time. You showed up differently. You loved with awareness, and still it slipped away. That's the part nobody prepares you for. You start asking quieter questions. Not why wasn't I enough, but why wasn't this the right time? You realize that love isn't just about effort or intention. It's also about alignment. About two people being ready in the same season of life. And sometimes, no matter how real it feels, the timing just isn't there. The second love teaches you that endings don't always come from betrayal or lack of care. Sometimes they come from growth pulling people in different directions. From life demanding things one person is ready to give and the other isn't yet. And that kind of ending hurts because there's no villain to blame. You don't leave angry, you leave understanding, and that understanding weighs heavy. But here's the quiet truth. The second love doesn't close your heart, it strengthens it. It proves you're capable of loving again without losing yourself. It shows you that healing worked, that you didn't harden, that you didn't shut down. You took the risk again, knowing how badly it could hurt, and that courage matters because love isn't measured by how long it lasts. It's measured by how honestly it's given, and the second love is often the most honest version of you. Not perfect, not fearless, but real, and that's something no ending can take away. The second love changes how you carry yourself afterward. You don't walk away shattered, but you don't walk away untouched either. There's a quiet shift in you. You become softer in some places, stronger in others. You learn how to sit with loss without letting it turn into bitterness, and that balance takes time. You notice how you move differently now. You're slower to give access to your heart, but not closed. You're more honest about what you need, even if it risks someone leaving. You no longer stay silent just to keep the peace, because the second love taught you that losing yourself slowly is worse than losing someone quickly. You also learn that closure doesn't always come from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from acceptance, from realizing that you gave what you could with what you knew at the time, that both of you tried in the ways you knew how, and that an ending doesn't erase the good that existed. The memories don't hurt the same way anymore. They don't stab, they ache. And even that ache becomes familiar, manageable. It reminds you that you once felt safe with someone, and that means you can feel that way again. Maybe not with them, but with someone else, someday. The second love doesn't leave you afraid to love again. It leaves you prepared. You know what to look for now. You know the difference between attention and effort, between chemistry and compatibility, between wanting someone and being ready to build with them. And when love finds you again, because it will, you won't be chasing the feeling, you'll be recognizing calm, mutual, grounded, something that doesn't ask you to prove your worth or question your place. That's the quiet gift of the second love. It doesn't stay forever, but it stays with you in the way you love next. There's a moment after the second love ends where you realize you're not angry anymore. Not at them, not even at yourself. You're just tired. Tired in a way that only comes from caring deeply and trying your best. And that tiredness forces you to slow down and actually listen to yourself. You start asking different questions now. Not, how do I get them back? But why did I stay when I felt myself shrinking? You become more aware of the moments you ignored your intuition, the times your body knew before your heart was ready to admit it. And instead of beating yourself up for it, you start forgiving yourself for being human. The second love teaches you that loving someone doesn't mean abandoning yourself. That compromise shouldn't feel like self-erasure. That consistency matters more than intensity. And that someone can care about you deeply and still not be capable of loving you in the way you need. You also realize something else that's important. Just because a love ends doesn't mean it failed. Some connections are meant to show you a version of yourself you didn't know existed, a braver version, a more open version, a version that learned how to communicate, how to trust again, how to be vulnerable without losing control. And that version of you doesn't disappear when the relationship ends, it stays. You carry it into every interaction after, into the boundaries you set, into the standards you keep, into the way you walk away sooner when something doesn't feel right instead of forcing yourself to stay. The second love doesn't break you, it refines you. It teaches you how to love without fantasy, without desperation, without fear running the show. And even though it didn't last, it proves something important, that you're capable of loving in a healthy way. And once you know that, you never really lose. After the second love, you stop romanticizing ending. You understand that sometimes things don't fall apart loudly, they fade, they change shape. They quietly reach a point where staying would mean forcing something that's no longer aligned, and accepting that takes more strength than holding on ever did. You learn how to grieve without dramatizing. You let yourself miss them without wishing to undo the ending. You don't demonize what you adjust to make letting go easier. You honor it for what it was, meaningful, imperfect, and real. That kind of honesty with yourself is growth. You also become more intentional with your energy. You don't over-explain your feelings to people who aren't listening. You don't overextend yourself to prove your worth. You save your softness for those who handle it with care. Because the second love taught you how valuable that softness actually is. And slowly, without forcing it, you start to feel whole again. Not because someone replaced them, but because you learned how to stand on your own with everything you gained from loving. You realize that love didn't take anything from you. It gave you clarity, depth, emotional intelligence you didn't have before. The second love doesn't leave you empty, it leaves you wiser. You understand now that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about choosing something real, knowing it could hurt, and still showing up with honesty. And when you're able to do that without losing yourself, that's when love becomes something powerful instead of fragile. You're not the same person you were before them. You're better prepared for what comes next. The second love stays with you not as pain, but as proof that your heart didn't close after being hurt. Proof that you didn't let fear turn you cold. Proof that even after disappointment, you were still willing to try again. And that matters more than whether it lasts, because the goal was never to avoid heartbreak forever. The goal was to love without losing yourself. And the second love showed you that you could you could be open without being reckless, vulnerable without being naive. You learned how to love with balance, and one day when love comes again, you'll feel the difference immediately. It won't feel rushed, it won't feel heavy, it won't feel like you're walking on eggshells or trying to prove your value. It'll feel mutual, steady, easy in a way that doesn't scare you. You won't be chasing a feeling anymore. You'll be choosing a person, and that's the quiet beauty of the second. It doesn't promise forever, it prepares you. It teaches you that love doesn't need to hurt to be meaningful, and that peace is just as powerful as passion. So if your second love didn't last, don't mourn it like a failure. See it for what it really was. A turning point, a lesson, a reminder that your heart is still capable of real connection. The first love opens your heart. The second love teaches it how to stay open. And whatever comes next, you'll be ready. It's strange how people don't really care about how you're feeling until you start acting different. You can be struggling quietly for weeks, even months, and nobody notices. You still show up, you still smile, you still say, "I'm good," even when you're not. You laugh at jokes you don't even hear. You hold conversations while your mind is somewhere else entirely. You keep being the strong one, the chill one, the reliable one everyone counts on. And that becomes your role. The person who's always fine, always understanding, always there. But the moment your energy shifts, the moment you take longer to reply, the moment you stop forcing yourself to show up the same way, now suddenly everyone notices. What's wrong? Why are you acting different? But let's be honest. They're not asking because they care. They're asking because you stopped being convenient, because you stopped playing the part they were comfortable with. What hurts the most is knowing you were hoping someone would notice before it got to that point, before you had to pull back, before you had to protect yourself, but they didn't, because most people don't listen to silence. They only react to distance. They don't see you drowning when you're still smiling. They only care once you stop swimming for them, and that's when you realize the truth. People don't miss you when you're struggling. They miss you when your absence disrupts their life. So don't feel guilty for pulling back. Don't apologize for choosing peace. You're not cold. You're not acting funny. You're just tired. Tired of being the one who checks in. Tired of being strong for everyone else. Tired of people only noticing your worth once you stop giving them access to it. Let go of the people who only want the best parts of you. I don't care how corny it sounds. I'll never stop being a lover boy. Not until I get the kind of love I've always imagined. The kind where there is no one else, no distractions, no half interest. Just one person in a world that feels smaller because of it. I want that kind of love where it doesn't wander, where nobody else even registers, where loving them feels natural, not forced. The kind of love that feels cinematic without trying. Just two people driving nowhere, standing in open fields, traveling for no reason other than wanting to be together. The kind of love you don't just feel in your chest, you feel it in your soul, hot, intense, alive. And I don't understand how people walk around acting indifferent to that. Love is something casual, like it doesn't matter, because love is everything. Sharing the world with someone, learning their habits, knowing their moods, understanding them in ways nobody else does. Going from strangers to someone you can't imagine life without, there's nothing like it. And yeah, love comes with risk, heartbreak, loss, pain, but I'm here for all of it, because if that's the price of loving deeply, I'll pay it. I'll take the heartbreak, I'll take the uncertainty, I'll take the risk. The lover boy in me isn't dying. It can't. What makes it hard sometimes isn't loving deeply. It's loving deeply in a world that pretends not to care. People act like being attached is embarrassing, like wanting someone fully is something you should hide. They call it nonchalant. They call it cool. They call it protecting yourself. But to me, it just feels empty. I don't want love that's casual. I don't want half interest. I don't want to act like I wouldn't be crushed if I lost someone I care about. I want to feel it. I want the kind of love where my heart is all the way in. No exits, no backups, no pretending. And yeah, that makes me vulnerable. It means I get hurt easier. It means I feel things more intensely, but I'd rather feel everything than live numb just to look unbothered, because loving deeply isn't weakness, it's courage. It takes guts to say I want you fully. I'm choosing you. I'm not scared to care. And maybe that's why it feels lonely sometimes, because not everyone is built to love like that. But I am. And I'm not gonna dull that part of me just to fit into a world that treats love like it's optional. Loving this way hurts more because you don't do it halfway. You don't keep one foot out the door. You don't love with conditions. You don't calculate how much to give. When you fall, you fall completely. And that means when things don't work out, it hits harder. You don't just lose a person, you lose the future you already imagined, the places you pictured going together, the version of yourself that only existed with them. People say, don't get your hopes up, protect your care less, but that's never been you. You don't know how to want someone quietly, you don't know how to love without meaning it, and you don't want to learn, because even when it hurts, loving deeply still feels better than pretending you don't care. Yeah, heartbreak changes you, it slows you down, makes you cautious for a while, but it never kills that part of you that believes in something more. And that's the difference. Some people close their hearts after pain, others keep theirs open, not because they're naive, but because they refuse to let disappointment turn them cold. You don't love deeply because it's easy. You love deeply because that's who you are. And even when it costs you, you'd rather feel everything than live a life that feels empty. The truth is, you already know how this can end. You know love can break you. You know it can leave scars. You know it can take pieces you don't get back, and still you choose it. Not because you're reckless, not because you're desperate, but because a life without love feels smaller than a life with heartbreak. You're not chasing perfection, you're chasing connection. The kind that makes the world feel louder and quieter at the same time. The kind that turns ordinary moments into memories. The kind that makes you feel seen in ways words can't explain. People say love like that is unrealistic, that it only exists in movies or stories, but you've felt glimpses of it, enough to know it's real, and once you've felt that, you can't pretend you don't want it anymore. So yeah, you risk it again, you open your heart again, you believe again, not because you forgot the pain, but because you decided it wasn't stronger than your capacity to love. Being a lover boy doesn't mean you ignore reality, it means you face it and still choose love anyway. When you say you want that kind of love, you're not talking about perfection, you're not chasing fantasy or some unrealistic fairy tale ending, you're talking about presence, the kind of love where you don't feel alone even when you're silent, where being together feels natural, not forced, where effort doesn't feel like work. Is waking up and knowing there's one person in the world who chooses you without hesitation, not because they have to, but because they want to. It's traveling with no plan and still feeling grounded, standing in open spaces and realizing the world feels fuller just because they're next to you. It's loyalty without fear, commitment without control, love that feels intense but never unsafe. That's the kind of love you want. Not obsession, not possession, connection. The kind where you don't question intentions, you don't wonder where you stand, you don't compete with distractions, you're just there, fully, openly chosen, and wanting that doesn't make you unrealistic, it makes you honest. Because once you know how deeply you can love, you stop settling for anything that asks you to dim that fire. Waiting doesn't scare you, settling does. You've seen what happens when people accept less than what they feel. They grow distant, they grow quiet, they start convincing themselves that good enough is enough, and you don't want that. You don't want a love that feels convenient. You don't want someone who chooses you only when it's easy. You want someone who stays when it's real, when it's messy, when it requires effort. So you wait, not because you think you're better than anyone, but because you know yourself. You know how deeply you love, you know how much you give, and you know what happens when that kind of heart ends up in the wrong hands. You'd rather be alone than feel lonely next to someone who doesn't meet you where you stand. And yeah, some days it gets heavy, watching people pair off, watching others settle into relationships that look fine on the surface, but deep down, you're not jealous. You're patient, because you're not searching for company, you're waiting for alignment, for someone who doesn't flinch at your intensity, who doesn't joke about your softness, who doesn't treat your loyalty like it's replaceable. You're waiting for someone who wants the same kind of love you do, all in, no exits. And until that shows up, you're not lowering your standards, you're protecting your heart. If it ever happens, when someone finally matches your energy, you'll feel the difference immediately. Not fireworks, not chaos, not anxiety disguised as excitement, clarity. You won't question where you stand. You won't wonder if you're asking for too much. You won't feel like you're loving harder than you're being loved. It'll feel mutual in a way you're not used to. They won't flinch at your intensity. They won't joke about you caring too much. They won't act overwhelmed by the way you love. They'll meet it. Your effort won't scare them. It'll reassure them. Your loyalty won't feel rare. It'll feel natural. And the craziest part, you won't feel like you're chasing anything. No convincing. No proving, no waiting for them to catch up emotionally. They'll already be there. And suddenly, all that waiting makes sense. All the times you didn't settle, all the times you walked away, all the times you chose being alone over being half-loved. You'll realize you weren't asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. When someone finally loves you the way you've always loved others, it won't feel overwhelming. It'll feel right. At the end of everything, after the waiting, the heartbreak, the disappointment, the almost, one thing never leaves: your capacity to love. You don't lose it, even when people try to convince you that you should, even when the world rewards detachment, even when acting unbothered looks easier, even when caring deeply costs you more than you expected, because loving fully was never a phase for you. It's part of who you are. You were built to feel things deeply, to choose one person and mean it, to love in a way that's intentional, loyal, and complete. And yeah, that makes you vulnerable, but it also makes you real. The lover boy in you survives every heartbreak, not because you forget the pain, but because you decide it's not stronger than your heart. You don't regret loving, you don't regret believing, you don't regret wanting something rare, because one day someone will meet you in that same place. They won't laugh at your intensity. They won't treat your love like it's extra. They won't ask you to tone it down. They'll recognize it, and when that happens, everything you held on to will make sense. So no, the lover boy in you doesn't die, he just waits. And when the right love finally arrives, he'll be ready. I miss who I was before her. Not because I don't believe in growth, not because I regret loving her, but because somewhere in the middle of trying to keep us together, I started losing pieces of myself. Before her, I was lighter. I didn't overthink texts. I didn't reread conversations searching for hidden meaning. I didn't question whether I was too much or not enough in the same breath. I moved through life steady, confident in who I was, comfortable in my own routine, secure in my own energy, and then I fell in love. And love is beautiful, but it also exposes you. It exposes your insecurities, your attachment style, your fear of loss. At first, it felt like growth. I was learning to compromise, learning to communicate better, learning to open up emotionally in ways I hadn't before. But slowly, something shifted. I stopped asking what felt right for me and started asking what would keep her happy. I stopped protecting my peace and started protecting the relationship. And there's a difference, because when you constantly adjust to avoid conflict, you don't even realize you're shrinking. You think you're being mature, you think you're being understanding, but sometimes you're just slowly abandoning yourself, and that's what hurts the most. Not that it ended, but that by the time it did, I didn't feel like the same person anymore. Before her, I didn't measure my worth through someone else's mood. If someone was distant, I assumed they needed space, not that I had done something wrong. If someone disagreed with me, I didn't internalize it as rejection, but with her, every shift felt personal, every silence felt loaded, every small argument felt like it could turn into something bigger, and instead of staying grounded, I started adapting, talking softer, holding back opinions, choosing peace over honesty, not because I was scared of her, but because I was scared of losing her. And when you start operating from fear instead of authenticity, you begin to change subtly. You become more careful than confident, more reactive than relaxed, more focused on maintaining connection than maintaining identity. I remember catching myself one day thinking, I wouldn't have reacted like this before. And that realization hit, because love shouldn't erase you. It should expand you, but I wasn't expanding, I was adjusting constantly, and the version of me that used to move freely was slowly becoming calculated, and I miss that freedom. I miss my peace, the kind of peace where I didn't wake up wondering how the day would feel emotionally, the kind where my phone didn't control my mood, the kind where silence wasn't threatening. Before her, I enjoyed my solitude. After her, I feared it, because I had trained myself to associate connection with validation. If we were good, I felt secure. If we were off, I felt unsettled, and that emotional dependency crept in quietly. I didn't notice it happening. I just noticed that when things ended, I felt empty in a way I hadn't before, not just because she was gone, but because I had built so much of my emotional rhythm around her. And that's when I realized I wasn't just grieving her, I was grieving myself, the version of me who didn't need reassurance to feel stable, the version of me who didn't overanalyze tone, the version of me who didn't question his value after every disagreement. That version felt strong, grounded, unshakable, and I want him back. I miss my boundaries. Before her, I knew what I tolerated and what I didn't. I didn't chase inconsistent energy. I didn't excuse disrespect. I didn't overextend myself for someone who wasn't meeting me halfway. But when you love someone, you justify things you normally wouldn't. You call red flags rough patches. You call inconsistency stress. You call emotional distance needing space. And sometimes those things are true, but sometimes they're excuses. And I made a lot of excuses, not because I was blind, but because I was invested. An investment makes you patient, sometimes too patient. By the end, I was tolerating things that the old version of me would have walked away from immediately, and that realization stings because it means I compromised more than I should have. Not just for the relationship, but at the expense of myself. The hardest part about missing who I was before her is admitting that I participated in my own transformation. She didn't force me to shrink. I chose to overextend. I chose to overcompensate. I chose to prioritize us over me every time there was tension. And that's a hard truth to sit with, because it would be easier to blame her entirely, but growth doesn't come from blame. It comes from ownership. I let love make me forget myself. And now that it's over, I have to rebuild the parts I neglected, not because loving her was wrong, but because losing myself in the process was. I miss my clarity. Before her, I didn't romanticize potential. If something felt off, I trusted it. If something felt unbalanced, I addressed it. But with her, I kept believing in what it could be, not just what it was, and hope is powerful. It keeps you fighting, it keeps you patient, but it can also keep you stuck. I held on to the version of us that existed in the beginning, the laughter, the effort, the mutual excitement, and I ignored the gradual shift because I didn't want to accept it, and that's when I stopped being objective. I became attached to the idea of us more than the reality of us, and that's not who I used to be. I miss how secure I felt alone. Before her, I enjoyed my independence, my routine, my hobbies, my friendships. I didn't need constant validation. I didn't need constant reassurance. But somewhere along the way, my world started revolving around her schedule, her availability, her emotional state, and I lost balance. When you give someone that much influence over your emotional state, you hand them power without realizing it. And when they leave, you feel powerless, not because you're weak, but because you attach too much of your stability to their presence, and I don't want that again. I want interdependence, not dependency. I don't regret loving her, but I regret abandoning myself while doing it. There's a difference. Love should complement you, not consume you. It should challenge you to grow, not pressure you to shrink. And I see now that the old version of me wasn't naive. He was grounded. He trusted himself. He walked away from imbalance without hesitation. And somewhere in trying to prove I could make it work, I stopped trusting my instincts. That's the part I want back, not the detachment. The discernment, maybe missing who I was before her, is actually part of becoming better than that version. because now I see my patterns. I see how easily I overextend when I care. I see how quickly I prioritize someone else's comfort over my own, and awareness is powerful. The old me was confident, but this version, he's wiser. He knows how quickly identity can blur inside love. He knows how subtle self-abandonment can be, and next time he won't lose himself trying to hold something together. I miss who I was before her, but maybe I'm not supposed to go back. Maybe I'm supposed to rebuild, stronger, more self-aware, more balanced. I don't want the version of me who never loved deeply. I want the version who loves deeply without disappearing, who commits without compromising identity, who stays loyal without neglecting himself. She changed me, but she didn't ruin me. If anything, she exposed where I needed boundaries, where I needed balance, where I needed to remember who I am outside of a relationship, and I will get back to that version, not the one before her, the one after her, but wiser, stronger, and impossible to lose again. I didn't walk into this guarded, I didn't play games, I didn't keep one foot out the door. I trusted you. I trusted your words. I trusted the way you looked at me like I was safe. I trusted the version of you showed me when it was just us. And that's what hurts the most. Not that you left, but that you let me believe you wouldn't. I opened up in ways I don't do often. I told you things I never say out loud. I let myself feel comfortable being soft around you, and you watched me do that. You knew how much it meant. You knew how careful I was with my heart, and you still broke it. Not all at once, not dramatically, slowly. You pulled back without explanation. You changed without warning. You stopped choosing me, but kept me close enough to not fully let go. And I stayed longer than I should have because I believed in the version of you I first met. That's on me. I ignored the signs, I excused the distance. I told myself you were just overwhelmed, just busy, just figuring things out. But the truth is, you were figuring out life without me, and I was still holding space for you, like you were coming back. What really broke me wasn't losing you. It was realizing I trusted someone who didn't protect my heart the way I protected theirs. You didn't just hurt me, you changed how I trust. Now I question things I never used to. I hesitate where I used to be open. I hold back where I used to give freely, not because I'm bitter, but because I learned the hard way that not everyone deserves access to me. I don't regret loving you. I regret trusting you with something you weren't ready to hold. And that's the part I'm still healing from. Not the heartbreak, but the betrayal of believing you were different. What messed me up the most was how easy it was for you. How easily you switched up, how quickly I became optional. How natural it felt for you to move on like nothing happened. Meanwhile, I was still trying to understand when things changed. I kept replaying conversations, looking for the moment where I messed it up, where I said too much, where I trusted too fast, because that's what you do when someone breaks your heart quietly. You don't get closure, you get questions. And the hardest one is always the same. How could you do this after everything I trusted you with? You knew my past. You knew how careful I was. You knew how long it took me to open up again. And instead of protecting that, you treated it like something temporary. Like something you could step into and walk away from without consequences. I wasn't perfect, but I was honest. I didn't hide how I felt. I didn't pretend. I didn't keep you guessing. And that's why it hurt deeper. Because I didn't lose you to dishonesty. I lost you to indifference, to the realization that I mattered more to myself than I ever did to you. And that's a hard thing to swallow when you trusted someone with your heart. After you broke my heart, it didn't just hurt, it rewired me. I didn't notice it right away. At first it was just silence, just heaviness, just missing you more than I wanted to admit. But then it showed up in how I loved. I stopped being as open, stopped saying things the moment I felt them, stopped assuming good intentions, not because I wanted to, but because trust didn't feel safe anymore. Before you, I believed if I was honest, I'd be met with honesty. If I was loyal, I'd be protected. If I trusted someone, they'd respect that. You broke that belief. Now every connection comes with hesitation. Every feeling comes with a pause. Every time someone gets close, a part of me wonders how long before they leave too. and that's the part that hurts quietly. You didn't just walk away. You made me doubt the version of myself that loved without fear. I catch myself holding back even when I don't want to. I catch myself preparing for loss before anything even begins, because trusting you taught me how much it costs when it goes wrong, and I hate that. I hate that your actions made softness feel like a liability, that honesty now feels risky, that love feels like something I have to guard instead of give. I'm not colder, I'm not heartless, I'm just more careful with a heart you proved can be broken even when it's given genuinely, and that's something I'm still learning how to undo. The anger didn't come right away. At first I blamed myself for trusting too fast, or believing too much, or not seeing it sooner. But anger shows up when the fog finally clears, when you realize you didn't ask for too much, you just asked the wrong person. I wasn't wrong for trusting you. I wasn't weak for opening up. I wasn't naive for believing your words. You just didn't deserve the level of honesty I gave you. And that truth stings, because it means the pain wasn't a lesson about loving better. It was a lesson about choosing better. You knew what you were doing. You knew how much I cared. You knew how much trust cost me. And you still chose yourself without considering the damage. That's where the anger lives, not in hatred, but in clarity. In the realization that I gave real effort to someone who treated it casually, that I showed up while you slowly checked out, that I protected your feelings while you ignored mine, and I don't hate you for leaving. I'm angry because you stayed long enough to earn my trust and left like it never mattered. That kind of hurt doesn't make you loud, it makes you precise. It teaches you that love without accountability isn't love at all. And from that point on, I stopped questioning my worth and started questioning why I ever doubted it. At some point, I stopped waiting for closure from you. Not because I got answers, but because I realized I wasn't going to. You never explained yourself, never owned the hurt, never acknowledged what it cost me to trust you, and for a while that ate at me. I wanted you to see it, to understand what you broke, to say something that made it make sense. But silence was the answer, not the one I wanted, the one I needed, because it showed me that the kind of closure I was looking for was never coming from you. So I had to give it to myself. I had to accept that some people don't leave loudly. They leave by slowly caring less and letting you figure it out alone. I had to accept that trusting you wasn't the mistake, expecting accountability from you was, and that acceptance was heavier than anger ever was, because it meant letting go without resolution, without apologies, without the comfort of being understood, just truth, the truth that I loved honestly, the truth that I trusted genuinely, the truth that you didn't meet me there. And as painful as that is, it also freed me, because I stopped replaying the past trying to fix something that was never mine to fix. I stopped waiting for you to validate my pain. I didn't need your explanation to know I was hurt. I didn't need your apology to know I deserved better. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. Sometimes it's the moment you stop giving someone access to a heart they already proved they wouldn't protect. After everything fell apart, the hardest thing wasn't trusting someone new. It was trusting myself again, trusting that my instincts weren't broken, trusting that my heart wasn't a liability, trusting that loving you didn't mean there was something wrong with me. Because when someone breaks your heart like that, you don't just lose them, you lose confidence in your judgment. You start second-guessing everything. Was I blind? Was I too much? Did I imagine the connection? And for a while I believed the problem had to be me. But slowly that started to change. I realized something important. I didn't ignore red flags. There weren't clear ones at the beginning. You showed up. You said the right things. You made me feel safe enough to trust. That wasn't stupidity. That was honesty. So instead of punishing myself for believing in you, I started respecting myself for how genuine I was. I stopped calling my openness a mistake, stopped treating my softness like a flaw, stopped blaming myself for someone else's inability to show up. Rebuilding trust meant accepting this truth. I didn't fail myself by trusting you. I honored who I am. And that matters, because if I harden completely, if I shut down every part of me that still wants connection, then the heartbreak wins twice. So I'm learning balance. I don't rush trust anymore, but I don't deny it either. I I don't hand my heart over blindly, but I don't lock it away. I listen to myself now, to discomfort, to patterns, to silence that says more than words ever did. Trust isn't gone, it's just more intentional. And this time, the first person I trust is me. Missing you doesn't mean I want you back. That took me a while to understand, because grief doesn't disappear just because you know someone wasn't right for you. Longing doesn't mean regret, and sadness doesn't cancel clarity. I miss the version of you I thought was real. I miss the safety I felt before things changed. I miss how easy it was before trust turned into doubt. But I don't miss the anxiety. I don't miss questioning where I stood. I don't miss feeling like I cared more. And that's the difference. If I wanted you back, I'd still be making excuses for you. I'd still be minimizing the hurt. I'd still be hoping you'd come back different. But I'm not. I just haven't rushed myself through the grief. Because when you trust someone deeply, losing them isn't just losing a person, it's losing a future you believed in. And that takes time to let go of. Some days I'm fine. Some days a memory hits out of nowhere. A song, a place, a random thought, and I let it pass. I don't fight it. I don't romanticize it. I don't pretend I'm over it faster than I am. Healing isn't about erasing what mattered. It's about accepting that something can matter and still not belong in your life anymore. So, yeah, I miss you sometimes, but missing you doesn't mean I forgot why I walked away. Heartbreak taught me patience in a way nothing else ever did. Not patience with people, patience with myself. I learned that healing isn't something you rush just to prove you're okay. It's not about jumping into something new to replace what you lost. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt, because it did, and pretending only buries it deeper. I stopped forcing myself to move on other people's timelines. Stopped letting anyone tell me I should be over it by now. You don't rush the healing of something you trusted. You let it take the time it takes. Some days I feel strong, other days I feel fragile for no reason, and instead of judging that, I let it exist, because every emotion I avoid just shows up later heavier. Patience taught me this. You don't heal by replacing someone, you heal by understanding why losing them hurt the way it did. I trusted you. That wasn't small, that wasn't casual, so yeah. It takes time to rebuild the parts of me that believed safety could be permanent, but I'd rather heal slowly and honestly than rush into numbness and call it strength. I'm not behind, I'm not weak, I'm not stuck. I'm just respecting the fact that real trust doesn't break quietly, and it doesn't heal quickly either, and that's okay. Forgiveness didn't come in the way people talk about it. I didn't wake up one day suddenly okay with what you did. I didn't excuse it. I didn't rewrite the story to make it hurt less. What I had to forgive was myself, for trusting you, for believing your words, for opening my heart when I knew how badly it could go wrong. For a long time, I was harder on myself than I ever was on you. I kept thinking I should have known better. I should have seen it coming. I should have protected myself more. But that thinking only added another layer of pain, because loving honestly was never the mistake. I didn't betray myself by trusting you. I honored who I am. I showed up real. I was present. I was vulnerable in a world that tells people not to be. And yeah, that made the heartbreak deeper. But it also means nothing about my love was fake. Forgiving myself meant accepting this. I didn't lose because I trusted. I lost because someone couldn't meet me at the level I was willing to give. And that's not something I need to punish myself for. So I stopped replaying the past, looking for a version of me that could have avoided the hurt. There wasn't one. Sometimes pain isn't a warning you missed. Sometimes it's just the cost of being genuine with the wrong person. And once I understood that, the shame started to loosen its grip. I could carry the memory without carrying the blame. Trusting you taught me something I never wanted to learn this way. That love can be real and still not last. That intentions can be genuine and still fall apart. That opening your heart doesn't guarantee someone will protect it. But it also taught me something else, something important. I learned that the way I love isn't the problem. I didn't lose myself by trusting you. I didn't fail because I believed in us. I didn't weaken myself by being honest. I showed up as who I am, and that matters. You broke my heart, but you didn't break my ability to love. You shook my trust, but you didn't erase my values. You hurt me, but you didn't define me. What you really did was show me the difference between someone who feels safe and someone who actually is, between words and consistency, between effort and presence, between connection and commitment. I won't forget you, not because I want you back, but because you were a chapter that taught me how deeply I can feel. And next time, I won't give that depth to someone who treats it casually. I'll trust again, just not blindly. I'll love again, just not at the cost of myself. You didn't ruin love for me. You clarified it. And even though the heartbreak hurt, I walk away knowing this. I was real. I was honest. I was brave enough to trust. And one day someone will meet that trust with care it deserves. Until then, I carry the lesson, not the wound. That's where this ends. They leave you on delivered all day, and then randomly hit you with a "what you doing" and "what you doing" at night. Or suddenly they respond fast, only when it's late, only when they're bored, only when there's nothing else going on in their life. Understand this, and people like that are not busy, they're not overwhelmed, they're not confused, they're choosing when you're allowed to exist to them. They talk to you when it's convenient, they reply when it benefits them, they never fight to talk to you, they never make time for you, they never communicate, they never say, "Hey, I'm busy today, but I'll text you later." And that tells you everything. Because if you mattered to them, really mattered, nothing would stop them from reaching out. Not work, not stress, not distractions, not distance. And that's the truth you keep trying to avoid. They answer fast at night because they're bored. They disappear during the day because you're not a priority. They go 10, 12, 14 hours without saying a word and somehow still expect access to you when it's convenient for them. And what hurts the most is how much you excuse it. You tell yourself they're busy. You tell yourself they'll change. You tell yourself maybe tomorrow will be different. But understand this, people show you exactly who they are through their patterns. If someone leaves you on delivered every single day for weeks, for months, that is not accidental. That's intentional. At some point, you have to stop falling in love with the version of them in your head and start paying attention to the version they show you. Because if they wanted to talk to you, they would. If they cared, they'd make it obvious. If you mattered, you wouldn't be confused. So stop waiting for effort from someone who's comfortable giving you none. Believe people the first time they show you who they are, because if they wanted to, they would. You know what actually hurts? Wanting to be in love, but realizing you can't stay in it. You finally meet someone good. They're kind. They're loyal. They care about you in a way that feels real. On paper, they're everything you're supposed to want. And for a moment, you think, maybe this is it. But then they like you back. And something in you shuts off. Not slowly, not gently. It's like the feeling disappears overnight. You try to force it. You tell yourself to be grateful. You try to match their energy, their effort, their love. But instead of growing closer, you start pulling away. You notice flaws that didn't bother you before. You get irritated over small things. You find reasons to create distance. And suddenly you're the problem. On the outside, it looks like you're sabotaging something good. Like you're avoiding someone who treats you right. But inside, it feels worse than that. It feels suffocating. Because even when you try to stay, it feels like you're trapped in something you can't feel the way you're supposed to. The messed up part, you still care. Somewhere deep down, you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to be cold. You don't want to be the reason someone feels unwanted. But you also don't know how to love them without losing yourself. And that kind of conflict turns love into guilt. What's confusing about this feeling is that it only shows up with the right kind of person, not the chaotic ones, not the ones who make you anxious, not the ones who disappear and keep you guessing. It happens with the ones who are steady, the ones who reply, who show up, who don't play games with your emotions. And instead of feeling safe, your body reacts like something's wrong. You don't feel excitement, you feel pressure, not because they're asking for too much, but because they're offering consistency, and you don't know how to relax inside it. There's no chase, no uncertainty, no emotional roller coaster to distract you. So your mind starts searching for escape routes. You tell yourself you're bored, that the spark is gone, that something feels off, and even if you can't explain why. But deep down, it's not disinterest, it's unfamiliarity, because when you're used to love being unstable, peace can feel empty. And when you're used to earning affection, being chosen freely can feel undeserved. So instead of leaning in, you pull away, you create distance so you can breathe again, not because they're hurting you, but because closeness is touching something unhealed. And that's the part nobody prepares you for. Sometimes the problem isn't that you don't want love, it's that you've never learned how to stay when love doesn't hurt. At some point, this starts to mess with how you see yourself, because now you're not just confused, you're guilty. You look at them and think, yeah, they didn't do anything wrong. They're patient, they're kind, they're trying, and you're the one pulling back. So you start labeling yourself cold, broken, unappreciative, the person who ruins good things. From the outside, it looks simple. Why would you walk away from someone who treats you right? But what they don't see is how trapped you feel inside the expectation to feel something you can't force. You don't hate them. You hate the pressure to become the version of yourself that knows how to stay. So instead of being honest, you distance yourself, you reply slower, you stop initiating. You hope they'll lose interest so you don't have to explain yourself, and that's the part that hurts the most, not losing them, hurting someone who didn't deserve it. You carry that with you, the knowledge that somewhere someone is wondering what they did wrong, when the truth is, you just didn't know how to receive what they were offering. And that realization sits heavy, because wanting love but not knowing how to hold it feels like a flaw you can't explain, only live with. Avoidance doesn't come from not caring, it comes from caring too much and not knowing how to say it. Because how do you explain something like this without sounding cruel? How do you tell someone, you're good to me, but I don't feel what I'm supposed to feel? There's no gentle way to say that. So instead of explaining, you disappear emotionally. You convince yourself silence is kinder. That distance will hurt less than honesty, but silence creates its own kind of damage. They feel it, the shift, the hesitation, the way your energy isn't the same anymore, and you feel it too. Every message feels heavier. Every interaction feels like a reminder that you're failing at something that should be simple, so you keep avoiding the conversation, hoping clarity will show up on its own, but it doesn't. All that grows is resentment, not toward them, but toward yourself, because now you're stuck between two fears, hurting them by telling the truth, or hurting them slowly by pulling away. And avoidance feels safer in the moment because it delays the guilt, but it doesn't remove it, it just stretches it out. And the longer you stay quiet, the harder it becomes to speak honestly at all. If you look closer, this pattern isn't about them at all. It's about what closeness brings up in you, because real healthy affection doesn't distract you from yourself. It brings you face to face with things you buried, old fears, old wounds, old beliefs about what love costs. When someone is consistent, there's nowhere to hide. You can't blame mixed signals, you can't blame distance, you can't blame uncertainty. All that's left is you, and the part of you that learned early on that love comes with pressure. Pressure to be enough, pressure to stay, pressure to not mess it up. So your system does what it learned to do best. It pulls away before it can fail. Avoidance isn't rejection, it's self-protection. You're not running from them, you're running from the version of yourself that feels exposed when someone chooses you fully, because being wanted means being seen. And being seen means being vulnerable in ways you never learned were safe. So your mind flips the switch, you call it disinterest, you call it boredom, you call it not feeling it, but underneath all of that is fear, not of losing them, but of losing control. Eventually a realization starts to creep in. This isn't about love failing, it's about healing that hasn't happened yet. Because when someone offers you something real, it presses on the places you never finished healing, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because closeness exposes what avoidance kept quiet. Love asks questions you've been dodging. It asks you to be present. It asks you to trust consistency. It asks you to stay when things feel uncomfortable instead of dramatic. And if your past taught you that love comes with loss, your body reacts before your mind can explain it. So instead of leaning in, you shut down, not because you don't care, but because caring activates fear, fear of dependency, fear of responsibility, fear of becoming someone who needs another person, because somewhere along the way, you learned that needing someone meant giving them the power to hurt you. So when love shows up calm and steady, your nervous system mistakes it for danger, and you don't realize what's happening until later, after you've already pulled away, after you've already created distance, after you've already blamed yourself. But this moment matters because once you see that this isn't disinterest, it's unhealed fear, you stop calling yourself broken, you start calling it what it is, a signal. Once you see the pattern, something changes, not overnight, not perfectly, but you stop running on autopilot. You start noticing the moment your body wants to pull away, the urge to detach, the instinct to create distance the second things feel real, and instead of obeying it immediately, you pause. You ask yourself, am I actually uninterested, or am I uncomfortable? That question alone changes everything, because discomfort isn't a red flag, it's a signal. It tells you something important is happening, something unfamiliar, something that requires presence instead of escape. So instead of disappearing, you stay a little longer, you don't force feelings, you don't fake certainty, you just allow yourself to exist inside the discomfort without punishing it. You start choosing honesty over avoidance, not brutal honesty, gentle honesty. I'm confused, I'm scared, I don't know what I'm feeling yet. And for the first time, connection doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like practice. Practice staying, practice communicating, practice letting someone see you without immediately taking that away. You realize something important here. You don't have to feel everything at once. You don't have to be sure. You just have to stop abandoning yourself the moment love asks you to be present. At the end of all this, you start to understand something clearly. Love was never the problem. Fear was. Fear was the thing turning care into pressure. Fear was the thing making peace feel boring. Fear was the thing convincing you that pulling away was safer than staying. When fear stops leading, love feels different. It's quieter, slower, less dramatic. It doesn't hit like chaos. It doesn't demand certainty right away. It doesn't make you feel trapped. It gives you space to exist without disappearing. Real love doesn't ask you to force feelings. It doesn't punish confusion. It doesn't make you feel like you're failing for needing time. It lets you grow into it, and when you stop running, you realize something important. Caring doesn't mean losing yourself. Staying doesn't mean being stuck. And choosing someone doesn't mean giving up control. It just means you're present. You're allowed to learn how to love differently than you were taught. You're allowed to take it slow. You're allowed to feel unsure without self-sabotaging. And most of all, you're allowed to stop hating yourself for struggling with something you were never shown how to do safely, because the moment love stops being about fear is the moment it finally starts feeling real. I owe you an apology, not the kind that fixes things, not the kind that makes the pain disappear, just the honest kind. I couldn't meet you where you stood. I didn't show up the way you deserved. I didn't give you my time, my focus, or the version of me you believed in. And I hate that because you didn't ask for much. You just wanted consistency. You just wanted effort. You just wanted me to stay. And the truth is, I didn't walk away because I didn't care. I walked away because I cared and still felt lost. For a moment, you broke through everything I built to protect myself. The walls were down. I was open again. I remembered how to feel without fear, how to love without keeping score. I was that version of myself I thought was gone. Then reality got loud. Responsibilities piled up. Pressure from the future kept whispering that love wasn't something I had room for right now, that I needed to focus, that I needed to choose progress over emotion. Those thoughts didn't show up once, they stayed. They wore me down. I didn't know how to balance becoming who I needed to be and being who you needed at the same time, so instead of learning how, I ran. And I know saying sorry doesn't undo that. I know explanations don't heal wounds. I know intention doesn't erase impact. I hate that I taught you what love feels like when it leaves. I hate that I entered your life knowing I wasn't ready to stay. You didn't deserve confusion. You didn't deserve half effort. You didn't deserve to be left wondering if you were enough. You were. I just wasn't. And maybe one day, when timing isn't fighting us, when growth doesn't feel like a threat to connection, I'll look back and understand why it had to end like this, but for now, all I can give you is honesty, not excuses, not promises, just this truth. I didn't fail to love because you weren't right. I failed because I wasn't ready. What hurts the most is knowing I saw the damage happening in real time and still didn't know how to stop it. I felt myself pulling away while you were still reaching out. I noticed the distance growing before I ever said a word about it, and instead of communicating the fear, the confusion, the pressure I was under, I stayed quiet. I chose silence because it was easier than admitting I didn't have the capacity to love you the way you needed. I convinced myself I was protecting you by leaving, that if I walked away early it would hurt less. But that was just another lie I told myself to make it easier to go. Because walking away doesn't soften the impact, it just changes the shape of the pain. Instead of closure, it leaves questions. Instead of understanding, it leaves self-doubt. And I hate that I played a part in that for you. You probably wondered what changed. You said something wrong. If you asked for too much, if loving me was a mistake, that's the part that keeps me up at night, because none of this was your fault. You didn't push me away, you didn't move too fast, you didn't love wrong. You loved honestly, and I wasn't prepared to receive that. I wish I could tell you that timing is just an excuse, that if you really love someone, you make it work no matter what, but the truth is messier than that. Sometimes people are still becoming who they need to be, sometimes they're carrying pressure they don't know how to put down, and sometimes they mistake love for something they need to run from instead of lean into. I didn't leave because you weren't enough. I left because I felt like I was failing at everything at once, and instead of asking for patience, I chose distance. I know apologies don't fix what's broken. I know understanding doesn't erase the hurt, but if there's one thing I hope you never forget, it's this. You didn't lose me because you loved too much. I lost you because I didn't know how to stay. There's a weight that comes with being the one who leaves. People think the person who walks away always has it easier. But that's not true. Walking away doesn't mean you stop feeling. It just means you carry the guilt quietly. You replay moments where you should have stayed, moments where you should have fought harder, moments where you almost turned around but didn't. I still think about the way you looked at me when you trusted me, the way you believed in something I wasn't brave enough to hold on to. That kind of trust stays with you. It doesn't disappear just because the relationship ended. It becomes a reminder of what you weren't ready to protect. I know from the outside it probably looks like I chose myself, like I chose my future over you, but it never felt like a clean choice. It felt like failing two things at once, losing you and losing the version of myself that finally felt understood. I didn't walk away empowered, I walked away conflicted. Some nights I wonder what would have happened if I stayed, if I tried harder to balance everything instead of running from it, if I learned how to grow with you instead of convincing myself I had to grow alone. But wondering doesn't change reality. It just reminds me that timing can ruin something real if you let fear lead the decision. I hope you never think I took your love lightly. I felt it, I just didn't know how to carry it without dropping everything else in my life. And instead of learning how, I chose the easier pain, the pain of absence instead of the pain of effort. If you ever question your worth because of how I left, please don't. The fact that I felt safe enough to open up, even briefly, says everything about you. The fact that I couldn't stay says everything about where I was, not who you are. There's something I never said out loud, and maybe I should have. Leaving didn't make things quieter in my head. It made them louder, because once you're gone, there's no distraction from the truth, no comfort of your presence, no reassurance to lean on when doubt creeps in, just you, alone, facing the consequences of the choice you made. I had to sit with the fact that I hurt someone who only wanted to love me right, that I walked away from something genuine because I was scared of not being enough in the future I was chasing. And fear has a way of disguising itself as logic. It tells you you're being responsible, when really you're just running. I told myself I'd come back when things settled down, when life felt more manageable, when I had my priorities straight, but life doesn't pause to give you a second chance at people. And by the time you realize what you lost, the door is usually already closed. What I regret most isn't just leaving. It's not explaining myself fully while I was still there. I didn't give you the clarity you deserved. I let you fill in the blanks on your own, and that's unfair. Silence leaves room for self-blame, and you never deserve to carry that. You probably questioned if the love was real, if the moments meant anything. They did, every single one. The meaning alone isn't always enough to keep two people together when one of them doesn't know how to stay grounded. I'm learning now that growth doesn't have to come at the cost of connection, that ambition and love aren't enemies, that sometimes the bravest thing isn't walking away, but learning how to hold two things at once. I just wish I learned that lesson sooner. The hardest part to accept is that some lessons only make sense after the damage is done. I didn't understand back then that love isn't something you pause and come back to later. when life is more convenient. Love happens in the middle of the chaos and the uncertainty and the balancing act you're scared you'll fail at. And I failed because I thought I had to choose one path or the other. I thought I had to become someone first before I could love you properly. I didn't realize that loving you could have been part of becoming that person. Instead, I treated love like a distraction instead of support, like something I had to set aside instead of something that could have helped carry the weight. Now I see how unfair that was to you. You were willing to grow alongside me. You weren't asking for perfection, you were asking for presence, for effort, for honesty. And instead of trusting that, I doubted myself so much that I made the choice for both of us. There's a strange loneliness that comes with choosing growth the wrong way. You make progress, but it feels hollow. You reach milestones and realize there's no one to share them with. And that's when it hits you that success without connection can still feel empty. I don't regret wanting more out of life. I regret not knowing how to include you in that vision. I regret thinking I had to do everything alone, because strength isn't isolation. Strength is knowing when to lean on someone who's willing to stand with you. If I could say one thing without apologizing again, it would be this: don't let my fear make you afraid to love again. Don't let my timing convince you that you asked for too much. You didn't. I just wasn't ready to rise to the moment. There's a quiet regret that doesn't show up right away. It creeps in later when life slows down and you finally have time to reflect. When the noise fades and you're left alone with the truth. That regret isn't loud or dramatic, it's subtle. The realization that you let go of something real because you were afraid of not being able to handle it. I used to think walking away meant I was choosing myself. Now I understand that choosing yourself doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes it means staying and learning how to show up better, and I didn't know how to do that back then. I thought distance would give me clarity. All it really gave me was perspective. I wish I had sooner. I see now how rare it is to find someone willing to love you while you're still figuring yourself out. Someone patient enough to stand beside you without demanding you have everything together. And I walked away from that because I didn't believe I could be both growing and loving at the same time. There are moments I want to reach out, to explain everything I didn't know how to say before, but I don't, because reopening wounds for my own peace wouldn't be fair to you. Some apologies are meant to stay unspoken, carried quietly as lessons instead of words. I hope you found someone who meets you with the same energy you gave, someone who doesn't hesitate, someone who chooses you without second guessing. And if you haven't yet, I hope you at least learned that the love you offer is rare. The way you care isn't something everyone can handle, but the right person will treasure it. As for me, I'm learning that readiness isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice, and I'm practicing now, even if it's too late for us. There's a strange kind of maturity that comes from realizing you can't undo certain things, not because you don't care enough, but because caring now would mean accepting that some doors close quietly and stay that way. And learning to respect that is part of growing up, even when it hurts. I've had to sit with the fact that love doesn't always come back around when you're finally ready. Sometimes it shows up before you know how to hold it, teaches you a lesson, and leaves. Not as punishment, but as preparation. And that's a hard truth to swallow when you realize the timing was off by just a little, but that little bit changed everything. What stays with me isn't just the regret, it's the clarity, the understanding of what I want to be different next time. I know now that I don't want to run when things get heavy. I don't want to choose distance just because I'm scared of failing. I don't want to confuse being busy with being unavailable. I don't want to leave someone guessing where they stand. You taught me that love isn't about having everything figured out. It's about choosing someone even when life is uncertain, about growing with someone instead of away from them. And even though I couldn't do that with you, that lesson is etched into me now. I hope you never look back and think you weren't enough. You were more than enough. You were just early, and sometimes early still hurts like loss. There are people we don't end up with who still change the trajectory of our lives. You were one of those people for me, and even if our story didn't continue, it mattered. It always will. This is where I finally stop apologizing and start accepting. Accepting that some connections aren't meant to be fixed, revisited, or explained away. They're meant to be learned from and released. Holding on to guilt doesn't change the past, and holding on to hope doesn't rewrite the ending. All it does is keep you stuck in a moment that already passed. I didn't lose you because love wasn't real. I lost you because timing, fear, and growth didn't align. And as painful as that is to admit, it's also freeing, because it allows me to move forward without pretending I was the victim or the villain. I was just someone who didn't know how to stay yet. You don't owe me forgiveness, you don't owe me understanding, and I don't expect you to remember me kindly. All I hope is that you remember the love for what it was. Honest, real, human, even if it couldn't last. I carry this with me now. not as regret that weighs me down, but as awareness that shapes who I become. I know how fragile connection is. I know how rare it is to find someone who sees you fully and still stays. And next time, I won't confuse love with something I need to run from. Some people are meant to be chapters, not the whole book. And even though this chapter ended before I was ready, it taught me how to write the next one with more care, wherever you are. I hope you're loved the way you tried to love me. And for the first time, I'm not saying sorry, I'm saying thank you. It feels like I'm bothering you. And the worst part is I can't tell if it's all in my head or if I'm finally seeing the truth for what it is. I notice the little things, the shorter replies, the dry yeah and okays, the way your tone shifts like you're answering out of obligation, not interest. It's like my name used to mean something to you, and now it's just another notification you swipe away without thinking twice. And I feel it. In the pauses, in the gaps between our conversations, in how you don't ask questions anymore, how you don't match my energy the way you used to. It's like I'm slowly becoming someone you tolerate instead of someone you genuinely want in your life. I hate admitting how much it affects me, how I reread your messages trying to see if I said something wrong, how I rewrite text after text just to make sure I don't come off too much, how I check my phone way more than I should, hoping maybe this time you'll sound like you actually want to talk to me again. And it messes with my head because I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be the person you sigh at before you reply with something short and dry. But I care, maybe more than I should, maybe more than you ever did. I keep reaching out even when everything inside me says I shouldn't, not because I'm desperate for attention, but because I genuinely don't want you to feel like I disappeared. I don't want you thinking I stopped caring. I don't want to lose someone who once felt impossible to lose. But the truth is, silence scares me. Silence feels permanent. Silence feels like you already made your decision and just haven't said it out loud. And I'm stuck here trying to pretend I don't feel the distance growing every single day. Maybe I'm overthinking. I hope I am, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm finally noticing the signs I tried so hard to ignore. And even then, even with all this anxiety, all this confusion, all this fear of being unwanted, I still check on you. I still message you. I still care in a way that makes me feel stupid sometimes. But the truth is simple. I don't reach out to bother you. I reach out because you matter to me in a way I don't know how to hide. You were never an inconvenience in my life. I just hoped I wasn't one in yours. I just wanted to matter to you. Even a little, even for a moment. Take me back to the night we met, because that was the last time everything felt untouched. The last time my heart wasn't carrying the weight of you. I replay it more than I should. The way you smiled like you had no idea what you were about to become to me. The way time slowed down for just a second. Almost like the universe was whispering, pay attention, this moment is going to matter someday. And I swear, I didn't know it then. I didn't know how deeply that night would root itself into my memory, how it would become the bookmark I keep flipping back to, even when I'm trying so hard to move forward. Back then, everything felt light, pure, hopeful, like life was finally giving me something soft to hold on to. I didn't know that softness would one day turn into something that hurts to remember, because now I'm just learning to live with the ghost of you. You're not here, you're not gone, you just exist in every place my mind wanders when it's tired. I see you in strangers' mannerisms, in songs that randomly come on, in the silence of my room when it's too late to pretend I'm okay. It's the little things that get me. The way a random memory will hit me out of nowhere, like the universe is trying to remind me of something I've been trying to forget. I'll hear a laugh that sounds like yours, or a phrase you used to say, and suddenly I'm right back in that moment, standing next to the version of me who still had you. And the worst part, I don't know how to move on, not really. People tell me time heals, but all time has done is make the memory sharper, clearer, more painful in a way I didn't expect. I don't need forever with you. I don't need a perfect ending. Sometimes I just wish I could go back to the before I knew what it felt like to miss someone who is still alive, just not mine. Before I learned how heavy memories can feel when they become the only place someone still exists. Take me back to the night we met, because that was the last time my heart wasn't haunted by you. Do you ever wonder if you're actually loved? Like deep down you don't really believe you're enough for anyone? You try to play it cool, pretend you don't think about it, but there's this quiet fear that never leaves your chest. The fear that people only love the version of you you work so hard to perform. Not the real you, the messy you, the insecure you. Sometimes I just want reassurance. Not the kind you have to hint at or beg for. Not the kind people give out of guilt. I mean real reassurance. The kind that feels warm, steady, and consistent. The kind that doesn't make you question yourself every time someone takes a little longer to reply or sounds a little different when they talk. I just want someone who sees me and doesn't look away, someone who doesn't love me only when it's convenient, but even on the days I'm quiet, the days I'm tired, the days I feel unlovable. I imagine being held by someone who means something to me, not because I asked, but because they noticed I needed it. Someone who pulls me closer like they're afraid of losing me too. Someone who looks at me with that soft, gentle love that makes you feel safe in ways you didn't even know you needed. Someone who whispers the words I've needed for years. You're enough. You're not too much. You don't have to earn my love. I'm here and I'm staying. And honestly, that would mean everything. Because I get tired of questioning my worth, tired of wondering if people only care about me when I'm useful, happy, or easy to love. Tired of feeling like I have to shrink myself just to be someone's barely, and all I want is to matter to someone without having to fight for it, to be loved without conditions, without performing, without fear, to be loved exactly as I am, and finally believe it. I found out what she really thought of me, and I wish I didn't, because in my head, it was different. I thought she respected me. I thought she valued me. I thought the way I showed up actually meant something to her. But the truth, it wasn't what I believed. And it didn't come out in a direct way. Not a conversation, not something she sat me down and said. It came out indirectly, through things I wasn't supposed to hear, through how she spoke when I wasn't around. And that's when it hit me. The version of me in her head wasn't the same as the version of me I thought she saw. At first I didn't want to believe it because it didn't match how she acted around me. With me, she seemed calm, interested, like she actually cared. But what I heard didn't sound like that version of her at all. It sounded detached, like I wasn't that important, like I was just there. And that's what messes with you. When someone treats you one way to your face and thinks something completely different behind it, because now you don't know what was real, the way she talked to you, or the way she talked about you. And once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. Every memory started changing. Moments that felt genuine started feeling questionable. Things she said started sounding different in my head, because now I was looking at everything through a new lens, a more honest one. And the more I thought about it, the more it started making sense. Why sometimes her energy felt off. Why sometimes I felt like I was trying harder. Why something always felt slightly uneven. I just didn't want to accept it back then. Because when you care about someone, you don't want to believe they see you differently than you see them. You want to believe it's mutual, that the respect is equal, that the value is the same on both sides. But it wasn't. Not really. Because if she truly saw me the way I thought she did, she wouldn't have spoken about me like that. She wouldn't have minimized what I was giving. She wouldn't have treated my presence like something replaceable. And that's the part that hits your ego. Not in a loud way, in a quiet way. Because now you're not just dealing with losing her. You're dealing with realizing how little you meant in her perspective. While you were taking her seriously, she wasn't taking you the same way, and that imbalance, it hurts more than the ending. For a while I started questioning myself, like maybe I misread everything. Maybe I thought it was deeper than it actually was. Maybe I gave too much meaning to something that wasn't built to hold it, because when someone sees you as less than what you believed, it makes you feel like you got it wrong. But here's what I had to understand. Just because she didn't value me properly, doesn't mean I wasn't valuable. The problem wasn't who I was, it was how she saw me. And you can't control that. You can show up right, you can be real, you can be consistent, but if someone already has a limited view of you, they're going to treat you based on that, no matter how you show up. And that's why nothing I did changed it, because the issue wasn't effort, it was perception. Once I understood that, the pain started shifting. Because now it wasn't about trying to prove something to her anymore. It was about realizing I was giving energy to someone who didn't even see it properly. And that's a different kind of clarity, because it makes you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying to be understood by someone who already decided how they see you. And honestly, I'm glad I found out, even though it hurt, because I would have kept going, thinking it was deeper than it actually was, thinking she valued me the way I valued her, and that would have kept me stuck. But the truth, Even when it's uncomfortable, it frees you. So yeah, then I found out what she really thought of me, and it wasn't what I expected, but now I see it clearly. The right person doesn't make you question your value. They don't talk about you like you're nothing. They don't treat you like you're replaceable. They see you fully, clearly, and they move accordingly. So I'm not mad at what I found out. I'm just glad I didn't stay blind to it, because now I know one thing for sure. I'd rather know the truth than keep believing something that was never real. She leaves your message unopened, but somehow she has time to watch every story you post, every picture, every video, and you sit there trying to make sense of it, wondering how someone can be so present and so distant at the same time. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's simple. If someone truly cared, replying wouldn't feel like a chore. It wouldn't be something they get around to when it's convenient. It would be instinct. When someone wants you, communication isn't complicated. You wouldn't be questioning their intentions or reading between the lines. You wouldn't be checking timestamps or replaying conversations in your head. If you mattered the way you hope you do, responding to you wouldn't be optional. And deep down you already know that. What makes it harder is that if the roles were reversed, things would look very different. If you were the one leaving her waiting while watching her stories, it wouldn't sit right with her, especially if you were someone she genuinely cared about. The difference is effort. When someone values you, they don't leave you guessing. They don't leave you hanging while still keeping tabs on your life. And yes, she knows what she's doing. It's not accidental, it's not confusion, it's a choice. And the hardest part is that you see it too, but you're choosing to ignore it. You hold on to the sweet words she said, the late night conversations, the promises that made you feel important, but words lose their meaning when actions consistently tell a different story. You keep hoping that maybe things will change, that maybe she'll wake up and realize what she has. But hoping doesn't change patterns. If her behavior keeps showing you where you stand, believe it. Stop clinging to the version of her that only exists in your head. Stop making excuses for someone who wouldn't make the same ones for you, because the reality is you would never do this to someone you truly liked. You respond because you care. You show up because they matter to you. You don't make them wait or question their worth, and that difference should tell you everything you need to know. Stop fighting for attention that should be freely given. Stop investing energy into a connection that only exists on your side. You shouldn't have to convince someone to treat you like you matter. If they wanted to, they would. And if they don't, it's time to step back and choose yourself instead. Some nights, I stay up hugging my pillow pretending it's someone. Not because I'm dramatic, but because it gets lonely when no one chooses you. You start wondering if love just missed you, if maybe everyone else got picked and you were the one who got skipped over. I tell myself I'm fine being alone, and most days I am. But late at night when the world is quiet, that's when the question comes back. Will love ever find me? Or am I just meant to imagine it? I think the hardest part is not the loneliness. It's feeling like you have so much love to give and nowhere to put it, no hands to hold, no one to come home to, just you, your thoughts, and the same hope you keep tucking away every morning. And what scares me most is not being alone right now. It's the thought that maybe this is permanent. Being alone doesn't hurt the most. Being unchosen does. It's watching people find each other while you keep ending up by yourself. It's being told, your time will come so many times that it starts to feel like a placeholder sentence. You start questioning yourself. Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? You replay everything, trying to find the reason no one stayed. And late at night, when you're hugging a pillow, imagining it's someone who wants you back, those thoughts get louder. Not because you don't love yourself, but because you're tired of being the only one who does. The scary part is how slowly it affects your worth. You don't stop believing in love, you stop believing it wants you, and that's when loneliness becomes heavier than silence, because now it's not just about being alone, it's about wondering if something is wrong with you for being alone this long. This feeling doesn't mean you're unlovable, even though it really feels like it. It means you've been alone long enough for the silence to start telling stories. And silence is loud when it goes on too long. You start mistaking timing for rejection. You start turning waiting into a flaw. You start thinking love hasn't found you because you're missing something. But love doesn't work on fairness, and it doesn't run on schedules. Some people find it early, some people find it after they've learned how to sit with themselves at night. And that doesn't make you behind, it makes you human. The fact that you still want love, still imagine it, still still hope for it, even after feeling unchosen, that's not weakness. That's proof your heart didn't close. Imagining love at night doesn't make you desperate. It means you're human. You're not hugging a pillow because you're weak. You're doing it because your body remembers what closeness feels like, even when your life hasn't caught up yet. There's nothing wrong with wanting someone to come home to, with wishing there was a hand to reach for when the day finally goes quiet. The problem isn't that you imagine love, it's that you've been alone long enough to start believing wanting it is something you need to outgrow. But love isn't something you mature out of, something you wait for without turning against yourself in the meantime. You don't need to shame the part of you that still hopes at night. That part is just proof you haven't gone numb, and as long as you haven't gone numb, love hasn't missed you. Loneliness at night doesn't get to decide your future. Even when it feels endless, nights are heavy because they strip everything down. No distractions, no noise, just you and the question you try not to ask during the day. But night feelings aren't prophecies. They're just unmet needs speaking when everything else is quiet. Being alone right now doesn't mean you'll always be alone, and being unchosen so far doesn't mean you're unchoosable. It just means you haven't been met yet. There's a difference. You're not behind, you're not forgotten, you're not running out of time. You're just in the part of the story where love hasn't arrived, not the part where it never does. The hardest balance is holding hope without turning it into self-doubt, because when you hope for something for a long time, it can start to feel personal when it hasn't arrived yet. You tell yourself you're patient, but underneath that, there's a quiet fear that maybe hope is just another way of setting yourself up, so you try to numb it. You tell yourself you don't need love, you act like you're fine on your own, but hope doesn't disappear that way. It just goes quiet and waits for the night. The truth is, hope isn't the problem. Hope only hurts when you turn it inward and use it as proof that something is wrong with you. You're allowed to hope without questioning your worth. You're allowed to want love without it meaning you're lacking. Hope isn't weakness. It's just your heart still believing in a future you haven't reached yet. When love hasn't found you yet, it can make you feel invisible. You're moving through life unnoticed, unchosen, easy to pass by, but invisibility isn't the truth. It's just what loneliness whispers when it's tired of waiting. You don't get overlooked because you lack something. You get overlooked because connection isn't something you can force into timing. The right person doesn't miss you because they're better at noticing. They find you because they're looking for what you already are, and until then, you're not invisible. You're just living in the space before recognition. That space feels quiet. It feels long. It feels unfair. But it isn't empty. It's shaping you into someone who will recognize real love when it finally arrives. Not because you're desperate for it, but because you're ready to receive it without disappearing into it. Love usually doesn't find you when you're proving you deserve it. It finds you when you stop performing and start existing. For a long time, I thought if I was good enough, patient enough, understanding enough, someone would finally see me. So I overgave, overthought, over-explained. But love doesn't arrive as a reward for endurance. It arrives when you're no longer shrinking to be easier to choose. The moment you stop asking, what do I need to fix? And start asking, what do I need to feel safe? Something shifts. You don't chase connection anymore, you allow it, and that doesn't make love come faster, and it makes it come healthier. Because the love that finds you then isn't choosing you because you tried hard enough. It's choosing you because you're finally standing still as yourself. Waiting is hard because it's empty time. Not empty in life, but empty in connection. You're still living, still growing, still doing everything you're supposed to do, but there's no one to share the quiet with, and that's where loneliness sneaks in. The difference between waiting and loneliness is what you tell yourself while you're there. Loneliness says, nothing is happening because I'm not enough. Waiting says, something hasn't arrived yet, and that's not a reflection of my worth. Learning to sit in the waiting doesn't mean pretending you don't want love. It means refusing to let the absence of it turn into self-blame. You can want love deeply and still treat yourself gently in the meantime. You can feel the quiet without letting it convince you that this is all there will ever be, because waiting isn't where your story ends. It's just the space between who you've been and who you're about to meet. There's a moment when hope stops hurting, not because love arrived, but because you stop fighting yourself while waiting. You stop asking the question every night with fear in it. You still want love, you still imagine it, but it no longer feels like your life is on hold without it. Hope becomes something gentle, something you carry, not something that weighs you down. You realize love finding you was never about being chosen faster or proving you're worthy enough. It was about becoming someone who doesn't disappear while waiting to be seen. And when that shift happens, loneliness loosens its grip, not because you're no longer alone, but because you're no longer against yourself. That's when hope becomes safe again, and that's usually right before love finally knows where to find you. Some nights you still wish someone was there, and that doesn't mean the healing didn't work. It just means you're human. Missing connection isn't a setback. It's not proof you're regressing or going backward. It's just your heart remembering what it wants to share. The difference now is that the wanting doesn't hurt the same. It doesn't spiral. It doesn't turn into panic. It doesn't make you question your worth. It just exists. You can want love without feeling empty without it. You can imagine closeness without feeling broken when it's not there yet. And that's growth. Because you're no longer waiting with desperation. You're waiting with trust. Trust that love doesn't miss people who are becoming more themselves. It finds them when they're steady enough to receive it without disappearing. The love that finds you after this season feels different, not louder, not dramatic, safer. It doesn't make you question yourself. It doesn't make you wonder where you stand. It doesn't ask you to stay up at night holding space for uncertainty. It meets you where you are. And because you've spent time alone, because you've learned how to sit with yourself, you don't cling to it, you appreciate it, you don't lose yourself in it because you know what it feels like to hold yourself first. That's why this waiting was never a punishment, it was preparation, not to make you stronger in a hard way, but steadier in a soft one. So if you're still alone right now, still asking if love will ever find you, it will. And when it does, you'll understand why it couldn't find you earlier. You weren't meant to be met when you were questioning your worth. You were meant to be met when you finally believed you were already enough. If you're asking that question right now, it doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're honest. You're honest about wanting connection, about feeling alone sometimes, about hoping there's more than just nights where you hug a pillow and imagine what could be. And that honesty matters. Love doesn't find people who gave up on it. It finds people who stayed open even when it hurt. People who learned how to be alone without becoming bitter, who waited without turning against themselves. So no, love didn't miss you. It just hasn't arrived yet. And when it does, it won't feel like something you chased or finally earned. It'll feel like something that recognizes you, like it knew where you were the whole time, and suddenly those nights won't feel so heavy anymore. Not because you forgot them, but because they led you right where you were meant to be. One day you won't ask the question anymore, not because love arrived overnight, but because you stopped measuring your life by what's missing. You'll still want connection, you'll still imagine it sometimes, but it won't feel heavy. You'll realize you didn't waste these nights. You were learning how to stay gentle in a quiet season, and that matters because the love that eventually finds you won't have to convince you that you're worth choosing. You'll already know. And when someone finally holds you, it won't feel like something you waited forever for. It'll feel like something that arrived right when you were ready to be seen, not as someone hoping to be chosen, but as someone whole. I knew it wasn't going to last, not because they said it, not because there were red flags everywhere, but because something in me never fully relaxed. Even in the good moments, there was a quiet voice saying, "Don't get too attached." I enjoyed it. I smiled, I played my part, but deep down, I felt the expiration date, and that's the weirdest kind of heartbreak. When you see the ending while you're still in the middle, sometimes your intuition whispers long before reality confirms it. There weren't major fights, no dramatic betrayals, no obvious reason to leave, but there was inconsistency, little things, energy that shifted slightly, effort that felt uneven, words that didn't fully match actions, and instead of confronting it, I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself to relax, to just enjoy the moment, to stop looking for problems, but intuition doesn't shout. It nudges, it tightens your chest a little, it makes you hesitate before getting attached. It keeps you half guarded even when things seem fine. And I felt that, I just ignored it. Because sometimes we don't want to be right, we want to be wrong about the ending. So why did I stay if I knew? Because sometimes temporary love still feels better than loneliness. Because even if it wasn't forever, it was something. The late night conversations, the inside jokes, the way they looked at me when it was just us. I knew it had cracks, but I also knew it had moments, and I convinced myself that maybe moments were enough. Maybe I didn't need permanence. Maybe I didn't need certainty. Maybe I could just enjoy it without expecting it to stay. But that's the lie we tell ourselves. You can't emotionally invest and pretend you won't feel it when it ends. I stayed because I hoped my intuition would be wrong. I stayed because I liked them, because I wanted it to work, because walking away early felt dramatic, but sometimes staying longer just makes the goodbye heavier. There's a difference between anxiety and intuition. Anxiety is loud, it spirals, it imagines worst-case scenarios, it creates problems that don't exist yet. Intuition is quiet, it doesn't panic, it doesn't overreact, it just knows. And what I felt wasn't panic, it wasn't jealousy, it wasn't insecurity. It was a steady awareness that something wasn't aligned. I didn't feel chosen. I didn't feel secure. I didn't feel like we were building. I felt like we were passing time, and that's how you know. When the connection feels temporary, even while it's happening. Anxiety asks, what if they leave? Intuition says, they're not fully here. And deep down, I knew which one it was. Knowing it won't last doesn't make it hurt less. That's the part nobody tells you. You'd think being mentally prepared would soften the blow. It doesn't, because even if your mind saw the ending, your heart still participated. You still laughed, still opened up, still imagined what if. And when it finally ends, there's no satisfaction in being right. There's no relief in saying, I knew it. There's just grief. Grief for the version of it you hope might surprise you. Grief for the effort you still gave even while doubting. Grief for the potential that never turned into permanence. Knowing doesn't protect you. It just makes you feel like you watched crash in slow motion. And sometimes that's worse. Should I have walked away sooner? Maybe. But it's easy to say that now. When you're in it, you don't see it as wasting time. You see it as giving it a chance. You tell yourself, maybe it just needs more time. Maybe they're just figuring things out. Maybe I'm overthinking. Because walking away early feels extreme. It feels impatient. It feels like you're not fighting hard enough. But sometimes staying longer isn't loyalty. It's fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of being alone again. Fear that this might be the closest thing to love you'll get for a while. So you stay, not because it's right, but because it's comfortable enough. And when it finally ends, you don't just grieve them. You grieve the time you knew better, but here's the thing. You didn't stay because you're weak. You stayed because you hoped, and hope isn't something to be ashamed of. Next time I'll trust it, that quiet feeling, that subtle hesitation, that inner voice that doesn't panic, it just knows. Because ignoring it didn't protect me, it just delayed the inevitable. Next time, I won't wait for proof. I won't wait for the obvious red flag. I won't wait for the dramatic ending. I won't wait until I'm already attached. If something feels temporary, I'll ask why. If something feels uneven, I won't convince myself it's balanced. If someone feels half in, I won't invest fully. Not from a place of fear, from a place of alignment. Because intuition isn't there to ruin good things, it's there to protect you from forcing the wrong ones. And maybe I needed this ending to finally respect my own instincts. Not every connection is meant to last. Some are meant to wake you up to your patterns, to your boundaries, to the things you tolerate when you're lonely. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be forever. Maybe it was supposed to show you what half effort feels like so you'd stop accepting it. Maybe it was supposed to teach you that chemistry isn't compatibility, that attention isn't intention, that potential isn't commitment. Sometimes we meet people who aren't meant to stay. They're meant to reveal. Reveal where you overgive, where you ignore yourself, where you settle for almost, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. So maybe it didn't last because it wasn't designed to build. It was designed to redirect. Endings don't always mean failure. Sometimes they mean clarity. We think if something doesn't last forever, it wasn't real. But that's not true. It was real. The feelings were real. The moments were real. It just wasn't permanent. And permanence isn't the only measure of value. Some connections exist to shift you, to sharpen your awareness, to strengthen your boundaries, to remind you what you need and what you'll never accept again. It didn't fail, it finished, and there's a difference. Failure feels like you did something wrong. Finish feels like it served its purpose, and maybe that's what this was. Not a waste, not a mistake, just a chapter that reached its natural end. I used to think knowing it wouldn't last was a weakness, like I was pessimistic, like I was sabotaging it, like I couldn't just enjoy something good. But now I see it differently. That feeling was awareness. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't overthinking, I wasn't insecure. I was aligned enough with myself to recognize misalignment, and that's power. Because next time I won't silence it, I won't stay longer than I should just to prove I can make something work. I won't ignore the quiet voice just because the moments feel nice. Knowing it wouldn't last didn't mean I didn't care, it meant I could see clearly. And clarity is growth, so no, it didn't last. But I did. I walked away more aware, more grounded, more in tune with myself, and next time, if it's meant to last, I won't have to convince myself of it. I'll feel that too. I don't think people understand how draining it is to constantly replay every tiny conversation in your head. Not for minutes, but for hours, sometimes for days. Like I'll send the most harmless message, something simple like, okay, and before the text even delivers, my brain is already spiraling. Was that too dry? Should I have used a different word? Do they think I'm annoyed? Did I come off cold? Are they over there wondering what they did wrong? Do they secretly hate me now? And I'll sit there staring at my phone, fighting every urge to send another message to explain myself, but knowing that if I do, I'll just look even more anxious, even more confusing, even more like the version of myself I'm always trying to hide. So instead, I just sit with it. I let the anxiety chew on me for the rest of the day. Let the moment repeat in my mind 100 times, replaying a 2-second interaction like it was some life-changing event. And the worst part, it's never actually about the text. It never was. It becomes proof. Proof that I talk weird. Proof that I'm awkward. Proof that people must get tired of me. Proof that I'm somehow too much and not enough at the same time. Because deep down I'm scared. Scared of being misunderstood. Scared of messing up something good. Scared that one wrong word is all it takes for someone to see the real me and walk away. And it sucks because most people don't think twice about messages. They text, they move on. They don't overanalyze punctuation or tone or emoji choice or whether their okay sounded passive aggressive. But me, I feel everything on full volume. I care deeply, maybe too deeply. And that sensitivity, it makes life heavier sometimes, but it also means my heart is real. It means I think before I speak. It means I don't want to hurt anyone. It means I actually care about how people feel. Maybe that's not something to hate about myself. Maybe it's okay to be someone who feels a little too much, even if it makes the world overwhelming sometimes. Because even if my brain tries to convince me otherwise, I'm not broken. I'm not weird. I'm not a burden. I'm just human. Human with a heart that works overtime, and that's not a flaw. It's proof I'm alive. I still remember the last message she ever sent me, not because it was long, not because it explained everything, but because it didn't. It was simple, short, like it didn't carry the weight of everything that came before it, and that's what made it hit harder. Because how do you go from talking every day to one final message that feels like nothing? At first I kept rereading it, not because I didn't understand it, but because I felt like there had to be something more hidden in it, some deeper meaning, some explanation between the lines, something that would make it all make sense. But there wasn't. It said just enough to end things and not enough to explain them, and that's what messes with you, because your mind keeps trying to fill in the gaps that they left empty. I kept thinking back to everything before that message, all the conversations, all the moments that felt real, all the things she said that made it seem like we were building something. And then I'd look at that last message again, and it didn't match. It didn't feel like it came from the same person. Because how do you go from consistency to something that feels so detached, so final, without feeling final at all? The hardest part wasn't even what she said, it was what she didn't say. No real explanation, no real accountability, no real closure, just something that closed the door without ever fully acknowledging what was behind it. And that leaves you stuck in a weird place, because you're not just dealing with an ending, you're dealing with questions that never got answers. For a while I wanted to reply, not to argue, not to convince her to stay, just to understand, to ask the questions that were sitting in my head. What changed? When did it change? Was any of it real? But I didn't, because deep down I knew something. If she wanted me to understand, she would have explained it the first time. And that's a hard truth to accept, because it means the silence after that message was intentional, not confusion, not hesitation, a decision. She said what she wanted to say, and everything she didn't say was also part of that choice. After that, the conversation just stopped. No follow-ups, no checking in, no, how are you? Just silence. And silence hits different when you're used to hearing from someone every day. Because now it's not just quiet, it's absence. For a while I kept expecting another message, something more, something that would make it feel complete, but nothing came. And eventually, I had to accept something I didn't want to. That last message was really the last one. And over time, I stopped looking at it like something unfinished. I stopped expecting more. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from another person. It comes from accepting what they already showed you. And what she showed me was enough, even if it wasn't explained. I still remember the last message she sent me. Not because of what it said, but because of what it meant. It was the end. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. And now I understand something I didn't then. The way someone ends things tells you everything you need to know about how they saw it. So I stopped waiting for another message, stopped looking for more words, because the last one was already saying everything it needed to, just not in the way I wanted. You're gorgeous, but that's honestly the least interesting thing about you. Yeah, you're beautiful. Anyone with eyes can see that. You walk into a room and people notice without even trying. It's like your presence adjusts the whole atmosphere, like the energy shifts just because you showed up. But the thing is, beauty is the easiest thing to see. It takes zero effort to point out someone's face. What I see in you, that takes attention. That takes knowing you, and that's the part that makes you unforgettable. I notice the way your eyes change when you talk about something you really care about. Not just the sparkle, but the focus, the passion, the way your whole voice lifts. It's like watching a flame catch even when you're trying to hide it. Maybe you don't realize it, but that passion, that's one of the most beautiful things about you. I notice your laugh, not the polite one you use when you're trying to be quiet, but the real one. The one that takes over your whole body. The one you try to cover because you're scared it's too loud, too much. But that laugh, it's the kind that makes people laugh just hearing it. It fills the room in a way nothing else does. And then there are the moments nobody else sees. The way you fall silent when you're hurting, the way you try to hold yourself together because you don't want to bother anyone with your problems. You carry your pain like it's something you owe the world an apology for. Like you have to be strong all the time, and somehow, even in your quietest moments, you still show up for people with your full heart. That strength, it's rare. The kind of beauty you can't put makeup on, can't fake, can't recreate. But the way you care, that leaves marks on the people lucky enough to know you. Your beauty might turn heads, but your soul, the way you love, the way you give, the way you dream, that's what makes people stay. That's what makes you unforgettable. People think they know you because they see your face, but if they paid attention, really paid attention, they'd realize your looks are just the cover, not the story. You're gorgeous, yeah, but honestly, that's the least extraordinary thing about you. Your real beauty exists in the parts of you the world never sees unless they earn it, and that's the part of you I never stop being in awe of. I feel like every guy has that one girl who broke his heart, and no matter how much time passes, no matter how much healing he does, there's always going to be a soft spot for her. You'll never truly hate her. You'll never completely erase her from your life. You might stop chasing her. You might stop trying to prove yourself. But the connection you had with her, that never fully dies, or maybe you just never let it. And I don't know why this happens, but a lot of the time when a girl breaks your heart, she still wants to stay friends. Now, most guys don't want that. Being friends with someone who shattered you isn't easy. It's confusing, but somehow there's always that one girl where the rules don't apply. No matter how much pain she caused, no matter how much she hurt you, intentionally or not, you still make room for her in your heart. When she texts, you reply, maybe not instantly, but faster than you should. And sometimes, without realizing it, you start putting her above yourself. You're there for her problems, her bad days, her heartbreaks, even when you know deep down that if the roles were reversed, she wouldn't do the same for you. And that's the part that hurts the most, because you're not doing it because you're weak, you're doing it because you loved her genuinely, because at one point she meant everything to you. A lot of the time it's that first girl you truly fell in love with, the first one who made you feel seen, the first one who felt like home, and letting her go completely feels impossible. Sometimes holding on to that connection feels comforting, sometimes it feels like self-destruction. So just understand this. There's nothing wrong with caring, there's nothing wrong with loving deeply, but you have to recognize when that love is being taken advantage of. Don't let the feelings you still have for her, or the bond you're scared to lose, be the reason you keep hurting yourself, because the girl who broke your heart should never be the one who keeps breaking it. You're the least liked friend, and deep down you feel it. You're in the group, but somehow you're never really in it. You're always the one left out of plans, left out of conversations, left out of the moments everyone else seems to get invited to. And the worst part, you don't even need to put your phone on Do Not Disturb, because nobody's calling you anyway, nobody's texting, nobody's checking up on you, nobody's asking how your day was. You could disappear for a week and they'd only notice when they need something. You feel lonely even when you're surrounded by people who claim to be your friends. You sense the distance growing. You sense the energy changing. Everyone else gets closer to each other while you feel yourself drifting further and further away. Your confidence? Gone. It feels like you're clinging to friendships just to avoid being completely alone. Like you're forcing conversations, forcing yourself into spaces where nobody is saving a seat for you anymore. You don't get invited to the parties, the hangouts, the late night calls, not even the game nights online. You're always the afterthought. If you're even a thought at all, and it messes with your head, it makes you feel like you're begging for the bare minimum. Like you're trying so hard to keep people who wouldn't even notice if you stopped trying. The hardest part about growing up is realizing how rare real friends actually are. So many people out here are fake as hell. Some people will act like they love you, like they're for you, they while secretly resenting you, competing with you, or only tolerating you because you're convenient. Friendships fade, people grow apart, grow different, grow distant. Not everything is meant to last forever, and that's okay. What's not okay is staying somewhere you feel invisible, staying somewhere you feel like you have to scream just to be heard. If people pull away, let them. If they stop making space for you, create your own. Because holding on to people who don't value you only makes you lose yourself in the process. You will find your people, your real circle, the ones who make you feel seen without trying, the ones who notice the silence in your voice, the ones who actually want you around. But before that, you've got to love yourself first. You have to be okay with your own company, so you never settle for people who treat you like you're replaceable, because no one deserves to feel like the forgotten friend. No one deserves to feel like a burden in the spaces that are supposed to feel safe. Step back from the people who keep reminding you that you don't matter to them. Let them go, and trust that the right people, the real ones, will find their way to you. In due time, you'll finally find your crowd, the one you never have to fight to be part of. Liking someone who will never like you back. That's a different kind of heartbreak, because they don't even have to reject you. They don't have to be rude. They don't have to break your heart on purpose. They just don't see you like that. And somehow that hurts worse. You could be the funniest person they talk to. You could be the one who listens, the one who remembers every little detail they ever mentioned. And still, you stay stuck in that invisible box labeled just a friend. And the worst part? You start shrinking yourself without even realizing it. You try to be low-key. You try to convince yourself it's not that deep. You tell yourself you're fine, but then your heart betrays you, because you still catch yourself smiling when they finally text back. Your chest still tightens when they say your name. Your heart still races just because they walked into the same room. And then, just as fast, it breaks again when you remember they'll never look at you the way you look at them. It makes you question your worth. You start asking yourself things you shouldn't have to ask. What do they want that I don't have? What am I missing? Why am I never enough for the people I actually want? You start comparing yourself to everyone else, people they flirt with, people they talk about, people they choose without hesitation. You look at them and think, of course they want them. Why would they ever want me? But here's the truth you keep forgetting. Their lack of interest doesn't define your value. It doesn't mean you're not attractive. It doesn't mean you're not lovable. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It just means they weren't the one who was meant to see you fully. Not everyone is meant to recognize your heart, your softness, your loyalty, your depth. And that's okay, because one day, someone is going to love the exact version of you that you've been toning down for the wrong person. Someone who won't make you guess. Someone who won't make you feel invisible. Someone who won't choose everyone else over you when all you ever wanted was to be chosen back. So yeah, it hurts right now. It feels unfair. It feels personal. But don't change yourself trying to be the type of person someone else might want, because the right person, the real one, won't have to think twice about choosing you. They'll see you exactly as you are and love you without hesitation. She replaced me in a week, 7 days, and I've replayed that number in my head more times than I'd like to admit. Because when something you invested months, maybe years, into gets swapped out in 7 days, it doesn't just hurt, it destabilizes you. It makes you question your perception, it makes you question your value, it makes you question whether what you had was ever real in the first place. I keep thinking about how we ended the conversations, the tone, the way she said she needed time, the way she said she had to focus on herself. And then a week later, there's someone else standing where I used to stand. So what was the truth? Was she grieving while I was still loving? Was she detaching while I was trying? Was I the only one still emotionally present toward the end? Because you don't replace someone in a week unless you were already halfway gone. That's the part that keeps echoing in my mind. You don't wake up on Monday heartbroken, and by Sunday, decide you're ready for someone new. That's not healing, that's transition. And if she transitioned that smoothly, that quickly, then maybe I wasn't as permanent in her world as she was in mine. And that realization stings more than the breakup itself, because breakups hurt. But being replaced fast, that attacks your identity. It makes you feel temporary. It makes you feel interchangeable. It makes you feel like you were just holding a spot until something better came along. And I hate that my mind even goes there. But when someone replaces you in a week, you start asking dangerous questions. Was I not enough? Was I boring? Was I too available? Did she already have him lined up? Was I just comfortable, not essential? And the scary part is, your brain doesn't just ask those questions, it starts believing them. You start comparing yourself to someone you don't even know. You start imagining that he must have something you didn't. More excitement, more dominance, more money, more mystery, more something. And now it feels like you lost a competition you didn't even know you were in. But love was never supposed to be competitive. It was supposed to be intentional, chosen, protected, and if she could swap me out in 7 days, then maybe what we had wasn't as protected as I thought. Maybe I was fighting for something that was already slipping away. Maybe I was loving someone who had already emotionally exited, and that's the part that hurts the most. Not that she found someone new, but that she found someone new that quickly, because that speed tells a story. And I'm still trying to figure out what that story says about me. I think what really messed with me wasn't just that she replaced me, it was how effortless it looked, how natural she made it seem. Like I was just a chapter she flipped past without rereading, because I'm still here sitting with it, still replaying the last conversations in my head, still wondering if I missed signs, still trying to understand where it actually started falling apart, and she's already smiling next to someone new. That kind of speed doesn't just hurt, it humiliates you. It makes you feel like you were the only one emotionally invested at the end. Like while you were trying to fix it, she was already detaching. Like while you were thinking, we just need time, she was thinking, I need someone else. And the scariest part, I don't know which version of reality is true. Was she already talking to him before we ended? Was I slowly being phased out while I was still trying to show up? Or did she just move on that fast because she can't be alone? Every scenario hurts in a different way. If she was already lining him up, then I was loving someone who was preparing my replacement. If she just needed validation that quickly, then I was never the emotional anchor I thought I was. And if she genuinely didn't feel anything after it ended, then maybe I meant less than I believed. That's what a 1-week replacement does to your mind. It makes you question the entire foundation. You start rewriting memories. That time she seemed distant, that time she picked a fight out of nowhere, that time she said she felt confused. Now they don't feel random anymore. Now they feel like early signs of an exit. And the worst part is realizing that you might have been the only one still emotionally inside the relationship toward the end, because you can't replace someone in a week unless you were already halfway gone. And that's the sentence that keeps echoing. Halfway gone. Maybe she left emotionally months ago. Maybe I was loving someone who had already checked out. Maybe the breakup wasn't the beginning of the end. Maybe it was just the announcement, and that realization shifts the pain, because now it's not just heartbreak, it's feeling blindsided, it's feeling like you were operating on outdated information, like you thought you were both building, but she was already packing. And I hate that this makes me question my value, because logically, I know someone moving on fast doesn't define me, but emotionally, it feels like it does. It feels like I was replaceable, interchangeable, temporary, and nobody wants to feel temporary in something they treated as permanent. I keep thinking about how deeply I committed, how I shut down distractions, how I defended her when people doubted us, how I chose her repeatedly. And now it feels like I was the only one guarding something she was willing to trade. That's what makes it feel unfair. Not that she moved on, but that she moved on like it was easy, Like I was just space that needed to be filled, and that's the dangerous thought. Because I wasn't just space, I was time, I was effort, I was loyalty, I was presence, and if she could replace all of that in 7 days, then either she never fully valued it, or she never fully processed it. And I don't know which one hurts more, because if she didn't value it, then I misjudged everything, and if she didn't process it, then she's just distracting herself. But distraction still feels like replacement when you're the one left behind. And I'm left here trying to rebuild confidence that got shaken by a 7-day timeline, trying to remind myself that speed doesn't equal significance, trying to remember that depth doesn't get erased overnight, because if what we had was real to me, then it was real, even if she replaced it quickly. But still, 7 days. That number doesn't just represent time, it represents how fast someone can move on when you thought you meant more, and I'm still trying to figure out what that says about her and what it doesn't say about me. The part nobody prepares you for is how fast replacement attacks your confidence, not just your feelings, your confidence, because heartbreak hurts your chest, but being replaced quickly hits your ego, and ego isn't pride, ego is identity. It's how you see yourself. And when someone moves on in a week, your brain starts filling in blanks you never wanted to think about. You start comparing yourself to someone you don't even know. What does he have that I don't? Is he more exciting, more unpredictable, more emotionally unavailable, more dominant, more detached? Did she need someone less steady, less serious, less invested? You start dissecting yourself like you were the problem to be solved. And that's dangerous, because now it's not just about her moving on, it's about you feeling like you lost to someone else, like this was a competition, like you were weighed against another option and didn't measure up. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about. If someone can replace you in a week, they didn't replace you. They replaced the role, they replaced the attention, they replaced the space, they replaced the feeling of not being alone, but connection, real connection, that doesn't get swapped that quickly. You can substitute company, you can substitute validation, but you can't duplicate depth overnight. And I have to keep reminding myself of that, because when you see them laughing together, posting together, looking comfortable together, your mind doesn't care about logic. It sees images and it translates them into meaning. They're happier. She upgraded. You weren't enough. But images don't show history. They don't show inside jokes. They don't show late night vulnerability. They don't show how deeply you invested. They show a moment, and moments are easy to manufacture. Depth takes time, and if she replaced me in 7 days, then either she had already emotionally left long before we officially ended, or she doesn't process loss the way I do. And both are hard to accept, because if she left emotionally before I did, then I was loving someone who was already gone. And if she doesn't process loss deeply, then I was loving someone who doesn't sit with pain. She escapes it. And escape looks like replacement when you're the one grieving. I won't lie though. Part of what hurts is feeling disposable. Like I was just a chapter. Like I was just a phase. Like I was someone she needed for that season. And once it was over, I was easy to move past. But here's what I'm starting to understand. People who move on that quickly aren't necessarily healed. They're avoiding, they're filling silence, they're covering discomfort, because sitting alone after a breakup is uncomfortable. It forces reflection, it forces accountability, it forces grief, and not everyone has the emotional discipline to sit with that. Some people run straight into the next distraction, not because the previous person meant nothing, but because feeling nothing feels easier than feeling everything. And I need to remember that her timeline isn't a measurement of my worth. It's a reflection of her coping style. Still, that doesn't erase the sting, because I'm still here thinking about what we had. Still processing, still grieving, still reconstructing my confidence, and she's already building something new. That imbalance feels unfair, like I'm stuck in emotional traffic while she sped through the exit ramp, and maybe that's the hardest pill to swallow. Not that she found someone else, but that she found someone else while I'm still untangling myself from what we were. It makes you feel behind, like you're losing, like you're weaker for caring longer, but caring longer isn't weakness, it's depth, and depth doesn't reset in 7 days. So maybe the real truth is this: she replaced the position, but she didn't replace the impact. And if what we had was real to me, then it mattered, even if she chose not to sit in it, even if she chose speed over reflection, because I would rather be the one who feels deeply than the one who forgets quickly. 7 days might look like replacement, but sometimes it's just avoidance in disguise. And one day, when the distraction fades, she might finally sit with what I've been sitting with this whole time, and by then I'll be further ahead emotionally than she ever was, not because I moved on faster, but because I actually processed it. And that's something nobody can replace in a week. The worst part about her replacing me in a week isn't even the new guy, it's the silence that came with it, because when someone moves on that fast, they don't just leave you, they erase you. The calls stop, the inside jokes disappear, the routine you built together vanishes, and suddenly the person who used to know your schedule, your moods, your patterns is giving that attention to someone else. That's what makes it feel unreal, because it's not just that she found someone new, it's that she redirected everything so easily. The same energy, the same time, the same effort, just different face. And that's when your mind spirals into the dangerous place. If she can give someone else what she gave me that quickly, was it ever special? That question hits hard, because we don't just want to be loved, we want to feel irreplaceable. We want to feel like what we built had weight, like it left a mark, like it couldn't just be swapped out like a profile picture. And when she replaced me in 7 days, it felt like I was lightweight, like I was something she could carry easily and set down just as easily. But here's the thing I keep wrestling with. Maybe it wasn't easy. Maybe it just looks easy. Social media never shows grief. It doesn't show reflection. It doesn't show confusion. It shows highlights. And maybe what I'm seeing is the highlight reel of her coping, because moving on quickly doesn't always mean you didn't care. Sometimes it means you can't sit still with pain. Sometimes it means you need distraction to avoid accountability. Sometimes it means you'd rather build something new than examine why the last thing broke. But none of that makes it easier to watch, because while she's building new memories, I'm still dismantling old ones. I'm still processing the last conversation, still remembering the way she used to look at me, still trying to figure out when it started fading. And that imbalance makes you feel like you lost twice. You lost the relationship, and you lost the race to move on. And I hate that it feels like a race, because healing shouldn't be competitive. But when someone replaces you in a week, it feels like you're the only one still standing in the wreckage, like she walked away from the crash without even looking back, and you're still checking for broken pieces. What hurts even more is knowing I didn't have a backup. I didn't have someone lined up. I didn't have a just in case. When we ended, it was just me in the silence, and I chose to sit in it, not because I wanted to suffer, but because I respect what we had enough to process it properly. So when she jumped into something new that fast, it felt like I was the only one honoring the history, like I was the only one treating it like it mattered. And that's a lonely feeling, to believe something was significant and watch the other person treat it like it was temporary. But maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe she didn't replace me. Maybe she replaced the feeling of being alone. Maybe she replaced the discomfort. Maybe she replaced the emptiness, because some people don't know how to sit with themselves after something ends. They need noise. They need attention. They need someone new to prove they're still wanted. And if that's the case, then her moving on in a week says more about her relationship with silence than it does about my value. Still, that doesn't stop the thoughts, because at night, logic fades and emotion gets loud. And in those moments, it feels like I wasn't enough. Like if I had been better, stronger, more exciting, more something, she wouldn't have moved on that fast. But I have to remind myself, you can be enough for someone and still not be there forever. You can love someone deeply and still not be what they're built to keep. And if she could replace me in 7 days, then maybe I wasn't meant to stay in her life long term. Maybe I was a lesson. Maybe she was mine. But what I refuse to accept is that I was insignificant, because I know how I loved, I know how I showed up, I know how I committed, and those things don't become meaningless just because someone else moved quickly. If anything, they prove something about me, that I invest fully, that I don't keep backups, that I don't treat people like placeholders. And maybe that's rare. Maybe that's why this hurts more, because I wasn't halfway in. I was all the way in. And when you're all the way in, being replaced feels like being erased, but I'm not erased. I'm just healing at a pace that reflects depth, and depth doesn't reset in 7 days. So yeah, she replaced me in a week, but that week doesn't define my worth. It defines her coping speed. And one day when she finally slows down, she might realize you can replace a person's position, but you can't replace the way they loved you. And that's something no one swaps out in 7 days. There's a different kind of pain that comes from being replaced quickly. It's not just heartbreak, it's humiliation. And I don't mean humiliation in a loud, dramatic way. I mean the quiet kind, the kind where you sit alone thinking, how did I not see this coming? Because when someone moves on in a week, it makes you question your awareness. Were there signs I ignored? Did she emotionally detach months before I noticed? Was I holding on to something that was already slipping through my hands? And that's the part that messes with your head the most. Because now it's not just about losing her. It's about doubting yourself, your intuition, your judgment, your ability to read people. You start replaying moments that once felt normal. That random argument, that night she seemed distant, that time she picked up her phone and turned it away slightly, that period where she felt off but said she was fine. At the time, you trusted her words. Now you question everything, because if she replaced you in 7 days, your brain automatically assumes she had a head start. And whether that's true or not, the damage is the same. It makes you feel like you were the only one fully in it, like you were the only one fighting for something she had already decided to let go of. And that imbalance feels like betrayal, even if technically it wasn't, because the emotional timing didn't match. You were still invested, she was already transitioning, and that creates this gap, a painful one, where you're grieving something she already processed, or avoided, or replaced, and it makes you feel late, like you're the last one to realize the relationship was over. And I hate that feeling, because I don't like feeling behind. I don't like feeling like I was operating with outdated information. I don't like feeling like I was loving someone who had already emotionally packed their bags. But maybe that's the reality. Maybe the breakup wasn't the beginning of her detachment. Maybe it was the end of it. Maybe she had already done her grieving while I was still trying to fix things. And that realization hurts in a different way. Because now it's not just that she moved on fast, it's that she moved on before I even knew we were done. And I'm stuck here wondering when it actually ended. Was it weeks before the breakup? Months? Did she slowly disconnect while I was still showing up? Because that's the part nobody prepares you for. The possibility that you were loving someone who was already halfway gone. And if that's true, then I wasn't replaced in a week. I was replaced long before that. I just didn't know it yet. But here's the thing, I'm slowly starting to understand. Even if she emotionally left before I did, that doesn't make me weak. It doesn't make me naive. It means I was committed. It means I was still trying. It means I was operating in good faith. And I'd rather be the one who stayed genuine than the one who quietly exited without saying it, because I know how I loved. I didn't keep options open. I didn't emotionally detach while pretending everything was fine. I didn't start building something new while something old was still alive. When I was in it fully. And if she replaced me in a week, then that says something about her capacity to detach, not about my capacity to matter. Still, that week will probably always sting, not because of the new guy, but because of what it symbolized, how quickly someone can shift focus, how fast attention can be redirected, how easy it can look to replace what felt permanent. But maybe permanence isn't about how long something lasts, maybe it's about how deeply it was felt. And if I'm still here processing it while she moved on fast, then maybe I was the one who felt it deeper. And that doesn't make me the loser. It makes me the one who actually experienced it. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase what I gave, and I refuse to let her timeline rewrite my value, because being replaced quickly hurts. But being genuine never does. There's something else that hurts about being replaced in a week. It makes you question whether you were ever chosen or just convenient, because if someone can transition that smoothly, that fast, it starts to feel like you were just occupying space, like you weren't irreplaceable, like you were temporary comfort, and nobody wants to feel like temporary comfort. I keep thinking about the way she used to look at me, the way she said things like, I don't see myself with anyone else, the way she made it seem like what we had was rare, and now I'm sitting here wondering how rare something can really be if it can be replaced in 7 days. That's what makes it sting. Because rarity isn't supposed to be swappable, depth isn't supposed to be interchangeable. If something is special, it's supposed to leave a gap when it's gone. But her life doesn't look like there was a gap, it looks filled immediately. And that creates this internal conflict. Was I overestimating my importance? Did I romanticize something that was lighter to her than it was to me? Because when you care deeply, you assume the other person feels the same weight. You assume the attachment is mutual. You assume the history matters equally, but being replaced quickly makes you realize something uncomfortable. Not everyone feels at the same depth you do. Some people attach fast and detach faster. Some people build quickly and rebuild quicker. Some people don't see relationships as something sacred. They see them as something seasonal. And maybe that's the difference between us. Maybe I treat connection like something that deserves reverence, and she treats it like something that deserves momentum, because momentum doesn't stop, it just redirects, and that's exactly what she did. She redirected. The same attention, the same affection, the same emotional energy, just different recipient, and that's hard to swallow because it makes you feel like the container didn't matter, just the feeling. But here's the part I'm slowly realizing. If someone can redirect their attachment that fast, then maybe what they were attached to wasn't you. It was the feeling of being with someone. And that's not the same thing. There's a difference between loving a person and loving the experience of not being alone. And if she loved the experience more than she loved me, then of course she could replace me quickly, because she wasn't replacing a soul connection, she was replacing the role. And that hurts, but it also clarifies, because I don't want to be someone's role. I don't want to be someone's emotional placeholder. I don't want to be someone's for now. I want to be chosen with intention, held with depth, missed when I'm gone. And if she could swap me out in a week, then maybe I wasn't held the way I thought I was. But that doesn't mean I wasn't valuable. It just means she didn't hold me deeply. And those are two different things. Still, there's something about the speed that keeps echoing. 7 days. It makes it feel like I didn't leave a mark, like I didn't leave impact, like I didn't leave space. But I know that's not true, because impact isn't measured by how long someone stays single. It's measured by what they learned, what they felt, what they carry forward. And even if she doesn't feel it now, one day when the distraction fades, when the excitement settles, when she's sitting in quiet, you might finally process what she skipped, and by then I won't be waiting. Because here's what I'm starting to understand. Being replaced quickly doesn't mean you were insignificant. It means the other person couldn't sit with loss, and loss reveals maturity. If I'm still here processing, still reflecting, still rebuilding, then I'm not behind, I'm just doing it properly. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase who I was, and I refuse to let her timeline determine my value, because I wasn't just someone she dated, I was someone who showed up fully and that doesn't become meaningless just because someone else showed up faster. She replaced me in a week, but that week says more about her relationship with discomfort than it does about my worth. There's another layer to this that I don't talk about out loud. Anger, not loud anger, not screaming or crashing out, the quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest when you realize how easily someone redirected what you treated like sacred. Because I stayed loyal, I stayed committed, I stayed focused, and she moved on in 7 days. That makes you question fairness. It makes you feel like you played the game honestly while someone else was already preparing their next move. And I hate that it feels like a game because I never approached it like one. When I was with her, I wasn't scanning the room for upgrades, I wasn't entertaining backups, I wasn't lining up options just in case. I was in it, fully, and now I'm sitting here realizing she either wasn't or she detached long before I knew. And that's what builds resentment. The idea that I was emotionally present while she was emotionally preparing. Because now it feels like I was loyal to a version of her that didn't exist anymore, like I was committed to something she had already mentally ended, and that realization stings. But here's where it shifts, because the anger starts turning into clarity. If she could replace me that quickly, then she was already disconnecting. And if she was already disconnecting, then the relationship wasn't as mutual as I believed. And if it wasn't mutual, then I wasn't losing someone who was fully invested. I was losing someone who was already halfway out. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it reframes it, because now it's not about me being not enough. It's about her not being anchored. Anchored people don't drift that fast. Anchored people don't swap attachments like playlists. Anchored people sit with loss, and if she didn't sit with it, then maybe she never held it deeply, and that realization hurts, but it also frees me, because I don't want someone who can replace depth with distraction. I don't want someone who needs constant attention to feel stable. I want someone who values history, who respects connection, who understands that what you build with someone isn't disposable. And if she replaced me in a week, then maybe I was disposable to her. But that doesn't mean I'm disposable in general. It just means she wasn't built to keep me. And there's a difference. Still, there's a part of me that wonders if she ever thinks about it, if she ever pauses, if she ever compares, if she ever realizes how fast she moved, but I can't live in that space, because waiting for someone to feel what you felt is a trap, and I refuse to trap myself in her timeline. 7 days, that's how fast she moved, but here's the truth. I'd rather take my time healing than rush into something new just to prove I can. I'd rather rebuild properly than distract myself temporarily, because I know what I gave, and I know how I showed up. And I know I don't need to rush into something new to validate that. She replaced me in a week, but I'm rebuilding myself at a pace that lasts, and that's not weakness, that's depth. You know what else being replaced in a week does? It makes you question whether you were ever truly seen. Because if someone really sees you, your patterns, your effort, your loyalty, your depth, they don't just slide into something new like you were a temporary rental. They feel the absence, they sit in it, they notice the difference, and I keep wondering if she noticed the quiet after I stopped calling, if she noticed the lack of consistency I used to bring, if she noticed that the stability I provided isn't something you just duplicate overnight, or if she just filled the silence so fast that there was no space to notice it all. That's what hurt, the possibility that I wasn't deeply registered, that I was experienced but not understood, because there's a difference between being with someone and truly knowing them. And when someone replaces you quickly, it feels like they never fully knew the weight of what they had. It feels like they liked the experience of you, not the essence of you, and I can handle someone not choosing me. But it's harder to handle feeling like I was easy to move past. I keep thinking about how careful I was, how intentional I was, how I didn't play games, how I didn't keep backups, how when things got hard, I leaned in instead of pulling away. And in the end, it feels like none of that slowed her down. 7 days. That number keeps echoing like a clock ticking in reverse, because for me, 7 days after a breakup feels raw. It feels heavy. It feels like I'm still adjusting to the silence, but for her, 7 days was enough to build something new. And that contrast makes you feel like you loved harder than you were loved. And that's a lonely realization, because loving harder isn't something you brag about. It's something you feel when the other person moves on faster, and you're left holding the emotional weight. But here's what I'm starting to see clearly. Just because she moved on quickly doesn't mean she processed it deeply. Speed isn't strength. Speed can be avoidance. Speed can be distraction. Speed can be ego protection. Sometimes people rush into something new not because the old thing meant nothing, but because it meant too much. Because sitting alone would force them to face what they lost, and not everyone is strong enough to sit in that kind of silence, and maybe I am. Maybe the reason I'm still here thinking, reflecting, feeling is because I actually let it hit me. I didn't numb it, I didn't immediately replace it, I didn't run from it, I sat with it. And sitting with pain requires maturity. It requires discipline, it requires emotional depth. So maybe this isn't about me being less valuable, maybe it's about me being more capable of processing. And that's not weakness, that's growth. Still, there's something about knowing she's creating new memories that stings, because those were supposed to be ours. The random laughs, the new places, the inside jokes. Now someone else gets that version of her, and I have to let go of the idea that it was only meant for me. And that's hard, but here's the truth I can't ignore anymore. If she could replace me in a week, then I was loving someone who wasn't built to stay long term. Because people who are built to stay don't detach that fast. They don't redirect that easily. They don't swap depth for novelty overnight. And I don't want someone who can treat connection like it's interchangeable. I want someone who understands the weight of history. Who understands that what you build with someone isn't disposable? Who understands that real attachment doesn't reset in 7 days? So yeah, she replaced me in a week, but I'm rebuilding myself in a way that lasts longer than a rebound ever will. And when I look back at this one day, I won't just remember the hurt, I'll remember the clarity, because being replaced quickly doesn't mean you were insignificant. It means the other person wasn't anchored, and I refuse to confuse someone else's instability with my lack of worth. 7 days might have been enough for her to move forward, but it's not enough to erase what I was. And one day, when I'm with someone who values depth the way I do, this week won't define me. It'll just be proof that I was never meant to stay where I was easily replaced. At some point, the hurt turns into something quieter. Not lighter, just quieter. Because you can only replay 7 days so many times before your brain gets tired of the echo. And when the noise slows down, clarity starts creeping in. I started asking myself a different question. Not why did she replace me so fast, but why am I measuring my value through her speed? Because that's what I was doing without realizing it. I was using her timeline as a mirror. If she moved on quickly, I must not have mattered deeply. If she looks happy, I must have been replaceable. If she didn't hesitate, I must not have left impact. But that logic is flawed. Her speed is not a measurement of my depth. Her distraction is not a reflection of my worth. Her ability to move forward quickly doesn't erase the way I showed up. And once I started separating those things, something shifted. Because I know how I loved, I know I was intentional, I know I was loyal, I know I didn't treat what we had like it was temporary. So if she did, that says something about her capacity, not my value. And I had to stop turning her coping style into my insecurity, because that's what I was doing. I was letting her rebound rewrite my confidence. I was letting her quick transition convince me I was forgettable. But forgettable doesn't leave you reflecting. Forgettable doesn't leave you rebuilding. Forgettable doesn't leave you questioning your own growth. What we had meant something, even if she chose not to sit in that meaning. And maybe that's the difference between us. I process, she replaces, I reflect, she redirects. I sit with the silence, she fills it, and neither is necessarily wrong, but one builds depth, the other builds distraction, and depth always wins in the long run, because distraction fades, novelty fades, rebounds lose their adrenaline, and when that happens, whatever was avoided eventually resurfaces, and by then I won't be stuck in the same place, because while she rushed forward, I rebuilt properly, and rebuilding properly takes longer, but it lasts longer too. 7 days might have been enough for her to feel okay, but it wasn't enough for me to lose myself, and that's what matters. So yeah, she replaced me in a week, and for a while that felt like proof that I wasn't enough, proof that I was temporary, proof that I was easy to move past. But now it feels like proof of something else, proof that I love deeply, proof that I don't detach easily, proof that I don't treat connection like it's disposable. Because if I could have replaced her that fast and didn't, that says something. It says I value what I build. It says I respect history. It says I don't jump into something new just to soothe my ego. And I'd rather be the one who heals slowly than the one who forgets quickly. Because forgetting quickly doesn't mean you're strong. Sometimes it just means you're avoiding, and I don't want to avoid. I want to grow. I want to understand what worked, what didn't, what I tolerated, what I ignored. I want to rebuild my confidence without attaching it to someone else's timeline. She replaced me in a week, but she didn't replace my character. She didn't replace my loyalty. She didn't replace my ability to love fully. And one day, someone is going to experience that depth and recognize it immediately. Not treat it like a placeholder, not treat it like a phase, but treat it like something rare. Because rare things don't get swapped in 7 days. They get protected, so maybe this wasn't about me being replaced. Maybe it was about me being redirected away from someone who could move on that quickly towards someone who won't. 7 days hurt, but it also clarified. I don't want to be in a position where I can be replaced that easily ever again. And the only way to guarantee that is to choose someone who understands the weight of what they're holding, and next time, I will. Have you ever felt like you're present but not really included? Like you're technically part of the group, but something always feels off. You're in the group chat, but the conversations seem to move without you. Plans get made, memories get shared, jokes get referenced, and somehow you're always a step behind, trying to piece things together on your own. You tell yourself it doesn't matter that you're overthinking it, but deep down it sits heavy. When you're with them in person, you laugh, you nod along, you play your role, but there's this quiet thought in the back of your mind asking if they'd even notice if you stop showing up. You start replaying everything, wondering if you talk too much or not enough, if you're boring, if you're just easy to overlook. And the worst part is how quietly it happens. No arguments, no clear rejection, just subtle distance that makes you feel smaller over time. You're always the one checking in, the one who would show up without hesitation if someone needed you. But when it's your turn, the effort doesn't seem to come back the same way. You're there for the moments, but somehow not fully a part of them. It's like being in the frame but never the focus, like being heard but never truly listened to. And no one really talks about how lonely that feels, how confusing it is to be surrounded by people and still feel unseen, to question your place while pretending everything's fine. If you feel this way, it doesn't mean you're dramatic or sensitive. It means you care, it means you value connection, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel like you matter to the people you give your time and energy to. You deserve friendships where your presence is felt, not tolerated, where you don't have to wonder if you belong, because being left out hurts the most when all you were ever trying to do was fit in without losing who you are. It's Valentine's Day, and yeah, I'm alone. No dinner plans, no flowers. No good morning, beautiful text waiting on my phone. Just me. And for a second, it hits. You scroll and see everyone posted up. Roses, candles, soft captions about my forever. And you start wondering what it feels like to be chosen like that. Not privately, not secretly, but confidently. I won't lie, there's a quiet sting to it. Not because I need the holiday, but because it reminds you of what you don't have. It makes you question things. Am I behind? Am I unlovable? Did I miss my person somehow? But here's the part I'm learning. Being alone today doesn't mean I'm unwanted. It means I haven't settled. I could have been in something halfway. Could have forced a connection just to say I wasn't alone tonight, but I didn't. and that matters. So yeah, I'm alone, but I'm not desperate, not chasing, not pretending, just here. And maybe that's not sad. Maybe it's strength. Valentine's Day has a way of making you feel behind. Like everyone else got the memo and you didn't. You open your phone and it's everywhere. Couples at dinner, surprise gifts, long captions about my person. And even if you're strong, even if you've healed, even if you're okay most days, comparison still creeps in. You start measuring your life against highlight reels. You forget that people only post the soft parts. You forget the arguments, the doubts, the almost breakups. All you see is what you don't have. And for a minute, it makes being alone feel heavier. Not because you suddenly need someone, but because the world makes it look like today is proof of something. Proof that you're chosen, proof that you're loved, proof that you made it. But here's the truth nobody posts. A relationship on Valentine's Day doesn't mean it's healthy. Flowers don't mean loyalty. A dinner reservation doesn't mean forever. And being alone doesn't mean you failed. It just means your story isn't on display today. And that's okay. There's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And today forces you to notice it. Being alone is physical. It's no dinner plans, no shared dessert, no one reaching for your hand across the table. Lonely is emotional. Lonely is feeling unseen even when someone's sitting next to you. Lonely is being in a relationship where you still question if you matter. I've been lonely with someone before, and honestly, that felt worse than tonight, because at least now I'm not pretending. I'm not settling for half attention just to say I'm not alone. I'm not forcing conversation to avoid silence. It's just me. And yeah, sometimes that's quiet, sometimes it's heavy, but it's honest. There's no confusion here, no mixed signals, no wondering where I stand. So maybe being alone today isn't the loss I thought it was. Maybe it's just space for something real instead of something convenient. Let's be real. There's always that moment where you think about texting someone, not because you miss them, not because you want them back, but because you don't want to feel alone tonight. You scroll, you hover over a name, you think, it's just a harmless message, just a hey, just what are you up to? Just something to fill the silence. And for a second, your pride and your loneliness argue, because attention is easy to get. Connection isn't. You could text the almost, the ex, the person who only shows up when it's convenient, and maybe they'd respond. Maybe they'd even make you feel wanted for a few hours. But tomorrow, you'd wake up right back in the same place, because you didn't want them, you wanted distraction. And there's a difference. So instead of reaching for temporary comfort, you sit with the quiet. You choose not to reopen doors that were closed for a reason. You choose not to trade peace for short-term validation. And that choice, that's growth. Being alone tonight doesn't mean you're desperate. It means you're disciplined. There was a time this day would have broken me. I would have taken it personally, like it was proof that I wasn't enough. I would have blamed myself, wondered what I needed to fix, compared my timeline to everyone else's like love was some kind of race. But it doesn't hit like that anymore because I understand something now. Being single on Valentine's Day isn't a reflection of my worth, it's a reflection of my standards. I could have rushed into something, ignored red flags, stayed with someone who didn't choose me fully just so I wouldn't be alone today. But I didn't, and that's growth. This day doesn't control my value. It doesn't define my desirability. It doesn't measure my future. It's just a date on a calendar. And yeah, sometimes it still stings a little, but it doesn't shake me, because I'd rather spend one day alone than spend months with someone who makes me feel unseen. And that shift, that's peace. Spending Valentine's Day alone actually teaches you something. You learn who you are without someone validating you. There's no us to hide behind, no relationship status to lean on, no public display to prove you're wanted. It's just you, and that can feel exposing. Because when the noise dies down, you're left with your own thoughts. You start asking yourself, am I really okay? Am I lonely or just uncomfortable? Do I want love, or do I just hate feeling left out? And those questions matter, because being alone forces honesty. You realize you don't just want a relationship, you want the right one. Not someone to post, not someone to text for the night, not someone to fill space. You want something steady, intentional, real. And sitting alone tonight proves something important. You're willing to wait. You're willing to protect your peace. You're willing to sit through temporary discomfort instead of choosing permanent misalignment. That's not weakness, that's maturity. Valentine's Day alone doesn't mean you're lacking. It means you're not settling. Let's talk about self-love, but not the cliche version, not the bubble baths, not the I don't need anyone speeches, not pretending you're perfectly fine 24/7. Real self-love is quieter than that. It's not about convincing yourself you don't want love. It's about refusing to accept less just because you want it. It's choosing not to text someone who only values you when they're bored. It's not lowering your standards just to avoid feeling left out tonight. It's sitting in the discomfort without betraying yourself. Self-love isn't loud confidence. Sometimes it's discipline. It's saying, I deserve something real, even when being alone feels heavy. It's acknowledging, yeah, I want to be loved without shaming yourself for it. Because wanting love doesn't make you weak, settling does. So if you're alone today, that doesn't mean you failed at self-love. It might mean you're finally practicing. There's a quiet strength in being single in a world that glorifies couples. Everything is marketed around us. Dinner for two, matching gifts, shared experiences, and when you're alone, it can feel like you're standing outside of something everyone else was invited to. But here's what people don't talk about. It takes strength to not force a relationship just to fit in. It takes strength to say, I'd rather wait in a culture that says, just take what you can get. Being single isn't a flaw. It's not a delay. It's not a sign you're unwanted. Sometimes it's a sign you refuse to compromise your standards for temporary comfort. There's power in knowing you're not with someone just to avoid this day. There's power in walking into restaurants alone without feeling embarrassed, and going home to yourself without feeling incomplete, because your worth was never meant to be measured by who's sitting next to you. And the strongest thing you can do is stand alone without shrinking. Maybe the season of being alone isn't punishment, maybe it's preparation. Because when you're by yourself, you learn things you don't learn in relationships. You learn your triggers, your patterns, your standards. You learn what you actually want without someone else influencing it. Being alone gives you clarity. Clarity about what you won't tolerate. Clarity about what makes you feel safe. Clarity about the difference between attention and intention. And maybe that clarity is building something in you. Patience, discernment, emotional discipline. So when something real does show up, you won't grab it out of fear. You won't cling to it out of loneliness. You won't confuse it with the first person who makes you feel seen. You'll recognize it calmly because you'll know the difference between desperation and alignment. Maybe this Valentine's Day alone isn't a sign you're behind. Maybe it's proof you're becoming someone who won't settle. And that kind of growth doesn't always look romantic, but it lasts. At the end of the day, I'm still alone. No dramatic plot twist, no last-minute confession, no surprise flowers at my door, just me. But it doesn't feel heavy anymore, because being alone today didn't expose a flaw in me. It exposed my discipline. I didn't text someone out of boredom. I didn't settle just to post something. I didn't force a connection to avoid the silence. I chose peace, and that choice matters more than a dinner reservation ever could. Valentine's Day used to feel like proof that I was missing something. Now it feels like proof that I'm protecting something. My standards, my growth, my future. Because when love does come, I don't want it to be rushed. I don't want it to be convenient. I don't want it to be temporary. I want it to be real. So if that means spending this day alone instead of in something halfway, I'm okay with that. Being alone tonight doesn't mean I'm unloved. It means I'm waiting for something worth loving, and that's not sad. That's strength.